everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Ness Fajardo, and I'm going to get us kicked off. I'm on the board of directors, and I'm here joined by Henry Thorne, who's also on the board. The two of us will be leading the discussion tonight. So I wanted to start off by just saying thank you for being here. It's really awesome to see so many people in the community who are willing to be out here to actually speak their mind and tell us what they're thinking. Our main objective for the evening is to be listening and to hear what the community has to say. So just a little bit of context about what we're doing, why we're here. We're at the early part of a planning process that is, I guess, we're refreshing a plan that is 5 years old, right? So when we talk about the strategic plan and where we are, we're right at the beginning of the point at which we're starting to write down what the next 3 to 5 years looks like. And that plan and that process starts with input from the community and from you guys here. So this tour that we've been going on, I think there's 11 different cities that we've been stopping at. This is probably like the 8th, we're like towards the tail end. And we've been going around just trying to hear what matters to people in each of the different communities. So we're going to take all of that input and then put it together into a plan for what we think that USAU should focus on for the next 3 to 5 years. So this is super important, and I'm really glad that so many people came out here to come and tell us what they think. It's definitely going to be a much better plan as a result. And I also wanted to say that it's actually one of my favorite things about Ultimate, and the reason why I keep coming back year after year is the people in the community, and that there are so many people in this sport that actually care enough to be here tonight, care enough to come and contribute and to put their ideas down on paper and help us come up with this plan. Like, that's totally awesome, and I don't think that really exists anywhere else. So when I think about what matters to me and why I continue to play Ultimate, it is for that community, and especially here in the Bay Area, that community is really large and far-reaching. So thank you guys for being here. I'm super excited. Did I miss anything?
No, but that's a perfect segue to what I wanted to say.
Great.
Which is, yeah, in other sports you're saying they would be out here on a selling tour after having gotten all those smart people in a room supposedly and figured everything out, and then they'd be telling you what we're going to do for the next 5 years. But what we learn on the field in Ultimate is that everybody's perspective is needed to actually figure out the truth. And so we're out here getting all your perspective to try and boil it down into what the truth is and make a plan of that.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
So we wanted to start off by showing a video, which is, Will's going to get it going for us. So we have a video that kind of just shows like Ultimate over the last 50 years, kind of get us thinking about how far we've come in the last 50 years, so we can start thinking about the next 50 years.
Okay, so a little bit of history in line with this, but just 5 years ago, we made a decision to join other sports with Ultimate. And so we had the opportunity to hire a guy who had a huge history in sports. And we thought we would get benefit out of that we'd be able to grow a bit faster, be able to connect with other sports and get something out of that. We also thought we could take what we do to other sports and maybe have some impact out there that would make sports better. And the guy who had a resume that we were looking at wrote the coaching ethics code for the US Olympic Committee. He had been involved at that level, a PhD in high performance sports, and had worked in NFL teams and all kinds of stuff. And we thought, well, this guy really knows how to do a lot of stuff we don't know how to do. Let's get that other perspective in here along with us Ultimate players, and maybe it can be better. So with no further ado, John Crawford.
Thank you, Henry.
Dr. Tom.
Super quick, just want to provide a little bit of context that'll hopefully help in your discussion groups. That is the most important part tonight when we break up and really learn. But a couple of reminders. One is what our current vision is. Now, the whole idea of the exercise is this could change based on your input and the input we're getting from all the other cities, which, by the way, has been really interesting. Like, the differences from city to city are actually really interesting for us to learn. But our vision right now is ultimately is widely known, played, and respected in the United States as a sport that inspires athletic excellence and integrity amongst both participants and fans. And the family that we're now part of, the structure that we're now part of, that us together with WIFDIF have been working on for the past few years looks like this. And I apologize if it's kind of hard to see this, but essentially this captures the structure that we now exist in as a sport and the family of sport that we're in. International Olympic Committee, basically responsible for trying to grow sport all over the world. In the news today, they just did a really cool grant of several $1 million to a small country to try to get sports growing in that country. So together with WIFDF, we have been pursuing this Olympic involvement, and then the rest of the structure you can see is all really local. And that's where all the real action happens. That's where all the important stuff happens. What I wanted to talk about a little bit was our being in the Olympic family and why it's so valuable. So a lot of people, when they think about the Olympics, they think we want to get on the Olympic program. We want to have an Olympic team be on the Olympic program. That would be great. It's really hard to achieve that. We actually have a legitimate shot at it, way more than we have in the past, for a bunch of reasons that I'll talk about if you want to come to the breakout group that I'm doing, and you're interested in this stuff. We can go into it in a lot more detail. But what I wanted to describe here is the value of being, the big value of being in the Olympic Committee in the United States is that it is really the ministry of sport. So Congress decided back in the 70s to not have a separate Olympic movement and a ministry of sport. So the ministry of sport in the United States is the United States Olympic Committee. We are now part of it. And all of these groups, and again I apologize, I know you can't see this very well, are actually members of the Olympic Committee. So Boys and Girls Clubs, the Y's, Jewish Community Centers, Catholic Youth Organization, all of those groups, NCAA, National Federation of High Schools, all of those groups are part of the Olympic Committee and sort of fall under the Olympic umbrella. And we're now in that group, and we're actually already getting great value from this. And I'll give you a specific example that we're working on right now. How many of you have heard of police athletic leagues? Anybody? Okay. So PAL is a national organization, and it's where police officers go into communities, typically pretty tough communities, where they want to have a better relationship with kids in those communities. And they use sports as a vehicle to actually try to keep kids out of trouble, develop positive relationships between the police officers and the kids at pretty young levels that is sustainable and can kind of take hold, and teach them life lessons through sport. And they're part of the Olympic Committee. At the last Congress we went to, we presented again the sport of ultimate. We're trying to put it out there so that everybody learns about it. And most people don't. We still are in a little bit of a bubble. There's a lot of people that really don't know what a cool sport ultimate is. And this has happened with other organizations, but in 2 weeks at the Police Athletic League National Conference, the featured sport is ultimate. Because when they learned about it, they said, wow, this is a sport that teaches conflict resolution, respect for your opponents and teammates. You got to be able to communicate. It's wicked fun. It's really inexpensive. We can go out on a street in the middle of the city if we have to and teach this sport and get kids running around having fun. This is ideal for us with what we're trying to achieve. And so in a couple of weeks, we are going to be able to present to that group, and then they're going to adopt Ultimate. And we're going to have that group spreading the good work that they're trying to do through the sport of Ultimate all over the United States. And we're replicating that with others of these youth-serving groups. So that's the real value and the real power of being in the Olympic family. If we get on the program, it'll be amazing. It'll be a watershed moment. It'll mean a bunch of new resources and all kinds of other cool stuff. But this is the real value of being on the Olympic program. And I wanted to, if it's okay, Henry, just talk a little bit about, this is why I'm doing this job. Henry mentioned, I have been super lucky, have had an amazing sports career doing a lot of really cool stuff at every level. I started, by the way, in my early career just working with really disadvantaged kids and use, just like the police athletic leagues do, trying to use sports to be a positive influence in their lives. And I saw it happen over and over and over. I saw it transform kids' lives and families' lives. And I grew up where if not for sports, I would probably have gotten in really big trouble. I stayed out of trouble because of sports. Great parents and phenomenal coaches that helped me stay out of trouble. So I really believe in the power of sport. Then I've had this really cool career. But in this really cool career, because of NFL, NHL, NBA, Olympics, I've had a chance to work in all of those places a lot. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And while there is plenty of good, there's bad and there's ugly in sport. And so when I saw Ultimate for the first time, and with that background, by the way, I didn't know anything about Ultimate. I did not know that it was the sport that it is. No idea. Went to an event. It was a pretty high-level event. Men's, women's, and mixed is the first thing I noticed. Unbelievable athleticism, speed, quickness, power, agility, cognitive acuity on every play, all game long, game after game after game. Ooh, amazing. And a spirit like I had never seen before. It's like the whole thing was amazing to stand on the sideline and watch that sort of ferocious level of competition with incredible athleticism, but a spirit and the athletes talking to each other, and I was just blown away. And I thought, given the power of sport, this is a sport that has an amazing opportunity to make a huge difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands of kids, and much more. So that's why I'm doing this. And this is an example of why I worked the way I did to get us into the Olympic family. The Olympic program, that'd be cool. This is where the real power lies. This is where the real cool stuff is. So USA Ultimate, we've grown quite a bit. And these are all of the different parts of USA Ultimate that we work on day in and day out. And parents are getting more and more and more involved. Always a very interesting part of a sport growing is when more and more parents get involved. A lot of phenomenal things happen and some challenging things happen. If any of you are coaches, you probably already know exactly what I'm talking about. But the most important group, and you are all phenomenal examples of this, I would guess, is this group right here. We can't get anything done without all of the help that you give us. And we really, really appreciate it. So thank you for that. And please keep helping us, because there is no way that we can achieve what we want to achieve without all of your help. And for some of you, it's time for you to stop playing this really silly sport. And if you can become coaches, that would be awesome. Because every city we've gone to that's experiencing growth, this is probably the biggest challenge that they're having, is they can't find enough coaches to work with the kids that are discovering the sport. We're also building out, as a matter of fact, tomorrow morning, we have a meeting here with the board of directors of the Ultimate Foundation. This is going to be a group that is going to be raising money outside of our operating funds to really fund the programs that we care a lot about. GUM, Play It Forward, our state organizations and affiliates, so that we can raise money outside of our budget and pour it back into those programs to really help those programs grow and thrive. More of that coming really soon. And then we're building out state organizations, and we're really proud and happy that this one is now up on our screen, California Ultimate. And this is our way of building an infrastructure around the United States, like many other sports have, where we can push down and really fund and provide resources at the local level here, because we don't know how to do it here. And what we're learning really quick is that the way it's going to work here and in California is going to be totally different than the way it's going to work in Florida, and different than the way it's going to work in New England. And so we are trying to build out a structure where all of the resources come from the national down to the local level, where people really know how to make it happen. And these are going to be really entrepreneurial opportunities, where all we're doing is putting a few parameters like representative boards, you got to be a 501c3, some other things. We're providing money and grants, we're providing a lot of resources, and the ones that we've started are going really well. So we're really excited about this. So as you think about, for example, youth growth tonight, think about how you can take advantage of that. As you think about any of the topics, think about how, as we get to this is there a way for you to take advantage of that? Henry, I think I'll just stop there.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Great. So if you have specific questions about that structure or how California Ultimate's going to work, you can go to Tom's breakout group later and we'll answer all the questions. But now we're going to move into the main program, and we made a switch to the program starting last night in Seattle based on what happened in Minneapolis. And in Minneapolis, we learned a lot. Three things, really. One was, let me say, we're going to have the gender equity group, everybody do that first. And there was a really good reason for that. We didn't get those lead thinkers into all the other groups because they were all concentrated in one group, which was just not working. I will serve as a bit of an example for why we need to be thinking about that and put that forward into all the things we're thinking about. Because I really hurt this woman's feelings on a week ago, Chip Chang, and couldn't tell why and what was in her mind, which was typical, not a white male blindness, I guess. In that if I had seen why she was feeling the way she was feeling, I could have done something about it. Instead, I just was blind to it because I look out of white male eyes all the time and I just don't see the stuff that I'm trying to learn to see it better. But in any case, I'm only bringing that up just because it's an example of why we all need to be thinking about this. And, you know, we need to get that lens out into all these other things we're doing. So that's why we're doing the gender breakout first. There were two other really great ideas of Chip's, which were, one was to get the inspirational speaker to happen first, because that sort of gets everybody's minds focused and thinking about this, I think, well, and that did work really well last night. And the other is, to mix up the breakouts like we're doing. So that's it then. And with that, we do have somebody who stepped up to be an inspirational speaker. And I'm not sure if I should introduce her or you, Ness. But why don't you, because you know her really well.
Yeah, so this is someone who is pretty much awesome in like 1,000 different ways. She asked me not to talk her up too much, but I'm going to do it anyway. She's an elite athlete. She's a teammate of mine on Fury. She's also been a teammate of mine on the World's Beach team, as well as just overall been a really good contributor to Bay Area Ultimate. She coaches, she runs clinics, and not to mention she's also on the World Games team. So she's done quite a bit in the community. That is Mad Dog, or Anna Nazarov.
Hannah set a really high bar last week.
That is true.
So I wrote some things down. I was also hoping I would like look up and see that I knew everybody and it would be okay, but I'm still really nervous, so here we go. There's a story about the female staffers in the Obama White House that I think a lot of you guys have read about, where in order to get heard by a predominantly male administration, they made a concerted effort to like amplify each other's voices and just basically repeat what other women were saying and give them credit for it, so that eventually, you know, it would just be heard over and over and over again, and then the men in the room would eventually start hearing them, and it worked really well. I bring that up for two reasons. One is that I think it would be really awesome if, especially for the women and the people of color in the room, as we start doing the diversity and equity discussion, if we can help to amplify each other's voices, I think that will go a really long way to making our points. And then second, you know, as a white person, I both directly benefit from and am complicit in a white supremacist society. And so I don't presume to have all of the answers to the hard questions that are going to be asked for the rest of the night. But I'm hoping that what I can do here is at least amplify some of the voices that you guys at USA Ultimate have been hearing on your tour so far. Kind of on the off chance that maybe you haven't fully heard and internalized those points quite yet. I had 2 points, but I'm going to add a third one, or I guess a first one to start with. just kind of looking around this room, I noticed that there are, there's a very big majority of my teammates from Fury and from Revolver, and sort of those elite teams that USA Ultimate has been catering their season to. I don't have notes on this, so I'm just making this up. I hope that one thing that you get from this session here in San Francisco is that those other teams, and like here in the Bay, our mixed section is 16 teams strong, right? We have 16 teams every single year, and there's something about the way that your message is being sent out that doesn't reach those teams. They're not here to voice their opinions, right? So you're going to hear some great stuff today, but it's not going to be a broad spectrum of all of the opinions that are out in the Bay today. So that's point number one. Point number two, for those of you in the room that maybe cringed when I said white supremacist society, we can sort of start there, and again, amplifying a voice. Zara Cadeau from DC said that it's truly impossible to have deep, meaningful conversations about equity, and especially about racial diversity, without the basic framework of understanding systems of oppression. So there was a group of us that got together in Colorado a few weeks ago, and it included Zara, included Chip, including Claire Chastain, and all those big voices that you guys have all heard about in the sort of gender equity discussion. And we tried to kind of like get together, and we called it an intersectionality forum, retreat, what did we call it? Whatever. We tried to answer a bunch of the or not answer, because that's really hard to do, but we tried to talk about the really important questions that are out there. And even with a group of people that has spent a lot of time discussing these questions and discussing all of these different situations, it took us a really long time to sort of get to like a baseline understanding, just having to do with the terminology that's used in these discussions. And so it's only once you know the difference between, say, institutional discrimination and structural discrimination, or once you know the difference between discrimination and oppression, or once you can talk freely about feminism and prejudice and intersectionality, only then can you really start to understand what these conversations are about. And so, as Chip from Minnesota has said in things that she's written since the Minnesota event, it's really important for all of us to educate ourselves, right? And so that goes for myself, that goes for everybody in the audience, that goes for everybody at USA Ultimate, and especially if you're in a leadership position at USA Ultimate. The learning is continual, whichever one it is. Because it's, until you can truly and deeply take a step back and understand and have that baseline understanding of what people are talking about, you're not actually going to hear what they're saying. And you're not going to be able to internalize that conversation. And kind of as Hannah Kawai mentioned in Seattle last night, those voices are missing from the conversations, and they're missing from the decision making. And a lot of times what happens is they're actually not missing, but we don't have the baseline understanding to be able to hear them. Okay, so I would encourage everybody in the room, but especially USA Ultimate, to educate yourself on all of these issues and terminology and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Last point, to begin to work towards racial diversity, we need to make Ultimate truly accessible. We love to talk about how cheap it is to play and how you only need 8 cones. I know how to play this sport. You only need 8 cones and a frisbee to play, but that's only scratching the surface, right? Like if you truly want to play, and especially if you want to truly get involved with any USA Ultimate events, you have to pay USA Ultimate dues. You need hopefully a paid coach. You need to be able to travel to those tournaments. The list goes on and on. It's actually pretty expensive to play Ultimate. So yeah, I was actually going to mention there's a bunch of the Cal girls that I coach here in the audience, and like even they have trouble affording their seasons. Support their crowdfunding campaign. That is on Facebook. Got you. But yeah, so like, you know, if Cal students, which are privileged in their own way just by virtue of being a Cal, are having trouble affording their season, it's hard to like ask a lower income team to go and compete at, say, high school states so that some of their students are eligible for YCCs then, right? Because again, that requires USAU dues, that requires transportation to and from the tournament. Maybe they give their coach a stipend or pay for their travel. Maybe it requires lodging because the state of California is really big and they might have to go to LA. Maybe some parents have to take time off work. Maybe some parents can't take time off work, right? So there are all of these bars to entry, and not to say something really controversial, but I know that, or I guess my question is to the group is what are we giving up in exchange for visibility, right? Like I understand that the ESPN contract, for example, has been instrumental at giving us a voice or giving us visibility in the mainstream the mainstream sports community, right? Kind of like elevating Ultimate. And I totally get that it's been a really important piece of paving the way for all of these partnerships with the United States, what is it called? Olympic Committee? Yeah, that one. And the IOC, right? And all those recognitions, like I hear that. But on the other hand, what are we giving up in exchange for that? What are we leaving on the table? And you know, could we be spending the ESPN contract money elsewhere? Could we reallocate the resources that USA Ultimate has? And I hear you, like I understand that you're spread thin both financially and with just people power. Like I totally hear that. But is there a way to reallocate those resources to, like Hannah Kawai said, the local organizations that are doing the important work on the ground, right? Like can we, can we reallocate those resources to, say, supporting AJUP, which Hannah is a big part of, and can we, can we get their, what is it called? Unpacking masculinity, right? Can we get that programming as something standard all across the country? Because believe me, I would love it if I could go on like the Ultimate subreddit and not have to read from like another high school playing boy that men's Ultimate is intrinsically better than women's Ultimate or mixed Ultimate, right? Like that would be amazing. So I see that Rocky's here actually, which is great because I wrote you down in my notes. Hi, Rocky. So Rocky runs a program called Ultimate Impact, where he's brought Ultimate the last few years into a lower income community in San Francisco. And so my question is, like, can we reallocate those resources to programs like Ultimate Impact? Because I'm sure there's something like that that's happening at every single stop that you guys are going to, and maybe you haven't heard about it before. Okay, I'm almost done. In conclusion, number one, how do you reach the non-elite teams? Number two, how do you make sure that everyone who is having these equity and diversity discussions, which we're about to do right now, sort of starts at the same basis of understanding so that we all have the basic tools to not only have those conversations, but actually hear what's being said from the voices that are currently missing. Because I actually think the voices aren't necessarily missing, I just think we're not hearing them. Number three, what are we leaving on the table when visibility is our first priority? And number 4, like Hannah Kawai says, we all gotta work on our shit. Thank you.
Hard to follow that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to have everybody here break out into 6 different groups where we can start a discussion about diversity and equity. So I know sometimes people are throwing around gender equity. It doesn't have to be just gender. We're talking broadly diversity and equity. And I think through the lens of all of the stuff that Matt and I just said, I know that was a lot, but that was actually really awesome. If we could think about that in that discussion. So we're going to try to answer some specific questions, largely relating to the role that USAU has in diversity and equity and how does that manifest itself in the next 3 to 5 years. So each of the groups will have a more specific question to answer, but as well, don't box yourself into just that. If there's other things that come up in the discussion, definitely continue to think about that. So we're going to do that for, I think, 20 minutes in smaller groups, and then we'll kind of all come back in, and we'll probably just call on people from each of the groups to summarize the highlights of what they talked about and what they learned. I don't know the best way to do that. How did you guys do it last night?
We could just break out into corners.
Okay.
You want to go to 4 corners and then 2 in the middle?
Okay. So let's try and get somewhat even numbers and maybe a mix if you are sitting next to your teammate, maybe go to different groups. Basically, what I'm here to do is mostly to just listen and let you guys talk. The big question that we're trying to answer again is if Ultimate is this inclusive and progressive community that we can develop, how does November, December? Then how does that manifest itself in the sport over the next few years, right? So we've talked about how there is a lack of diversity in Ultimate. We talked about how the Ultimate membership, USAU membership is 70% male, and we're looking to change that. We're sort of acknowledging that those numbers are what they are, but how do we eliminate barriers? How do we encourage the right behaviors? How do we identify those behaviors? There's all these questions that kind of go into it. It's very complicated. And the goal of this discussion is to kind of talk about that, try to educate ourselves, but then also to have that lens on for the remainder of the discussions that happen later tonight. So there's 5 other topics that we're going to talk about in the second breakout, and we want to make sure that everybody has this lens on because it does affect how we grow the youth division. It does affect what we decide to do with the Olympics. It does affect so many other things of what we do. It's not just a separate division equities and its own group that's going to go and talk about that, but it's a lens that we want to the rest of the Ultimate. So the question that we're trying to answer specifically is, what are some tangible ways that we can honor our commitment to diversity? So that could be in terms of actions, programs, measures, and metrics. There's kind of a lot to it. And awesome that Laura's here because she can take notes. Great. So I'll shut up now and let you guys just...
I take notes too. I'm not just texting my best friend. I guess just to start us off, what do we define as success? I think until we define what success is, it's going to be really hard to say we're making actual progress towards it. So in my opinion, I think we should start there. But I'm happy.
What does that outcome look like? That's for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
What does it look like to you?
I don't know. I mean, it's easy to say, ideally 50-50, but I feel like we're essentially establishing that, half, 50% is what success was. I feel like it should be, growth, right? So if we can see that like the growth rates in the past have been exceeding the growth rate, like the growth rates going forward for the next 2 years have exceeded the growth rates in the past 2 years, like I view that as being a success, right? Like if we can get like not only memberships to rise, but also like reduce friction amongst like populations and groups that are probably a little bit less represented today. That's like where I could just start and say like that's the easy way to measure success. And like even within your community too, like for example, it's easy to be like, oh, within the U.S. we should all do this to make it. This is success. Like USA Ultimate should grow female membership and tenure by like 50%, but that doesn't make it actionable. That's like we're kind of pushing responsibility to them. Like let's try and push responsibility onto ourselves, right? Like let's take ownership. Like we're gonna try and maybe use like Bay Area as like a proxy, but like if Bay Area grew membership within like 20% past 2 years, like let's try and get to like 25-30%. These are just some of my ideas today. Please feel welcome to disagree.
Are you talking like overall membership or female membership or POC membership?
Exactly. We should like break it down by like what we think we value, right? And kind of like put numbers against it. And now I know it sounds silly to just really reduce it all down to a numbers game, but it's like if we put a number out there, it's us putting our foot in the ground and saying like we're gonna do something about it. Like we may miss, but at least the point is like we tried and we thought about it, right? So I don't know exactly like what groups should be represented, but like the point is like let's put groups out there and take a swing at it. In like two years, or like we can reevaluate and be like, oh, maybe these are not the right groups you should be thinking about.
Can I ask you Bay Area Disc questions as a Bay Area Disc representative? Yeah. Do you know what the split is for men and women in the Bay?
So I just did the girls today. It's for our current website. It's 17.8% girls
For you?
for youth. I don't know men and women, but my guess is just kind of like looking at the spreadsheets. There's more adult women who play percentage-wise. More than 17%. More than 17%. And our goal for our leadership program that we're rolling out is actually a 100% increase, so doubling the number of girls who are registered on our website for programs within the next year. And I think there's another important point that I think Kawhi brought up yesterday is there's a difference between like serving individuals and actually getting them into the sport. So like single clinics are all good and wonderful, and that's a great access point and a door to open, but like actually doing what Rocky does and like go out and provide consistent programs for people that may not have the money or accessibility to the sport in the traditional like big growth areas like Oakland, for example. So I think that's another metric that we can measure too, is not just single time exposure to Ultimate, but multiple per year exposure to Ultimate.
Can I ask you what demographics besides?
Just age, gender, and location. We don't have any others.
Do you think that'd be a worthwhile number?
Yeah, I'm sure it could be. I don't know if Ultimate Central has any metrics on their website. Mike's done some Facebook ones, and we are predominantly like a white male, upper class kind of group on our Facebook.
How much of that? How much of that do you think is a factor of like males, and especially white males, being really comfortable like being out on social media and like voicing their opinion versus something else?
Yeah, I'm sure it's that. I get that all the time with girls being one of two in programs and not feeling like they're really a part of it, and then quitting. Like once one girl quits from a program that's open, they all quit because they're like their own support system and support network, and especially if you don't get the right coaches that understand how to really make girls feel welcome, it like has a huge impact on their decisions whether they come back or not. So I mean, all metrics are kind of skewed, and you can like all the data's weird, but hopefully we'll get some more that are more concrete for their supporters.
play like problematic areas where there are a lot of barriers to entry, so like exactly when Rocky is doing like running clinics. Like if you think about like some of the clinics that we run for girls, it's like sure they can get out there and they can do the same kind of good day, but like they're not quite given the same opportunities that like an actual like, ultimate player has. Where, it doesn't contribute to their life in the same way. And one of the things I really love about ultimate is the culture of the sport and the reliance on like spirit of the game and this like skill set of conflict resolution. Like that doesn't exist in most like in any other sport, but like people generally don't have that like in life. Like at work, it's really surprising to me how hard it is to resolve conflict with some people, and it's just so much easier. And so, like that value that I find in the sport, I think so many more people like use that in their lives, and kids especially, like when they're and then even more so, especially underprivileged kids who aren't going to find that consistency and that routine anywhere else. And so I think that's, it's real when we talk about like providing opportunities for youth, that it should be like a place where they can go every week and play soccer, which is really awesome how work is doing. It's not just for, like he's doing it for low-income kids, but we should also be doing it for girls. Like there was a girl that showed up to the mixer who plays on a boys team. Robin, you probably know her, like, she was telling me how much fun she had playing with it, and she never gets to do it. She says she wants to basically that's all she wants to do, but she has nowhere to
So Hannah Wells was a girl who started Cali-Roll, one of the two girls who started Cali-Roll, and her mom actually emailed me and forwarded it to Jen, and she was saying how like she plays for freshmen on Tough, she plays for EA this year, and her mom was like, I had never, like, in the course of a weekend, I saw her play more points than her entire 7 years of youth ultimate playing on an open team. And like, she was like, I saw her pull 2 points in a row, and that was amazing. And like, I'm so proud of her. And so it's like, those opportunities are not necessarily there for the girls that are track club. It's like such a different experience than what we had as women who started playing in college, right? Where we just like automatically had access to this great women's support system. And so how do we provide that to the youth girls?
I think it's important to, though, I think actually one of the really cool parts about Ultimate is that there is such a strong mixed presence, and like in some ways that is the epitome of gender equity. Like if you put men and women on the same field together and you're all teammates and you all work out together and everyone trusts each other just as much as you trust each other on an open team or a women's team. And so I'm trying to think about like increasing gender equity from the mixed scene too. And one thing I know that Mix is talking about is like changing the ratio rules, which I'm wondering like, one, what effect the ratio, like, so right now the ratio goes offense sets, and it's generally been like, or it's often 4 men, 3 women, and what you see on mixed rosters a lot of time then too is that there's more men on the roster than women on the roster, and so thinking about like those structural reasons why more men get spots than women get spots, even on like mixed rosters, where I really do think like that's an amazing part of Ultimate. So yeah, just think about like how that can be more even too. And then also, I think it's harder at the youth level because like boys and girls develop differently at different times and different speeds, and like mixed is maybe not like equal in the youth division as it is in like an adult division, but
or it's more equal than the girls are just as tall as the
that's
guys.
true, yeah. But like retaining girls, like you said, like as soon as one quits, like, they all quit. So like to have like a true mixed team, I think is like just as admirable as to have like a true open team or a true women's team.
think about too, like your best mix experience. Was it on a less developed team with like players who just started playing, or is it on a team where people have been playing for like years and like you've already built that skill set and that foundation, and now you can work on like the interpersonal relationships you have. And while girls and boys, like especially in middle school, have very similar like body types and builds, and you see girls just like look at the boys with butts all over the place, there's still a gender dynamic of I don't want to hurt you, I don't trust you, just inherently because you're male. And that's so hard to coach out and to like get set right, but I think it takes a little bit more time.
I think you're right, but I think like it could be a really cool opportunity at the same time. Like I kind of like Mad Dog's idea of like masculinity training, or I don't know, unpacking. And like I don't know. I wonder if Ultimate is a way to like unpack that in kids, in like young boys, like so it's not a problem to adulthood.
For me, I'm relatively new to Ultimate. I'm not too involved in community outreach work. One thing that I see is if it's, let's assume that it's a problem of access more than exposure. Let's say that there are girls out there that would be interested in Frisbee if there were programs available to them. The short end of the stick seems to be the resources of local organizations to have funding in order to like expand. And I guess the biggest question, a question that I want to pose to the group is how do we get more funding for organizations like Rockies or like Bay Area Discs or those kind of organizations when there's no foreseen function to get them paid. It's all volunteers. Is there any way that we can like incorporate people like us, club players, or anyone that's gotten a lot from the local Bay Area community to either want to give back or have to give back from just the sheer monetary standpoint, so that others can continue to do
Yeah, so one of the parts of the it's so hard, right? Because like we already dish out so much money just to play ourselves, and it's really easy to get people to give once. Be like, oh yeah, this is such a cool program. Here's $20, here's $50, and then to just like forget about it. And it's like the question is like, how do you get these people involved? Rocky's always looking for volunteers to come out and teach. How do you get people who have regular 9-to-5 jobs to like come out at 3:30 to Park in San Francisco and like invest in time? I feel like that's the big thing. It's like the tangible, putting your face out there. Like especially if you're like a woman or a person of color.
Yeah, like how can I dip my toe in the water without like feeling like I'm half-assing one thing or another. That's always been the, I've always wanted to try to coach, but it's never felt like I could have a sustainable way of doing it, you know? Like I was going to have to give something else up that meant a lot to me or something like that. So, but if there were opportunities, like with Rocky, you know, and maybe it's, I need to be more involved or something like that, or, I don't know, to help grow women's numbers or something like that. If there was a way for me to do that without fully committing where I could, you know, like coaches I've known that really made a mark for me have been the ones that, you know, like Dutchie gave like 110% all the time, and I just don't see how I could ever do that without doing it right, you know? Like, so if there's a way I can go and help or something like that without giving up so much.
It's like maybe it's like a clinic series that Barry just ran that you can pull from like the greater ultimate community.
Yeah. I mean, my question, I think, for more elite players is it more of a time issue versus a money issue? It's like, in Seattle, for example, they made it a point to say, we are going to pay all of our coaches for every program period. And like, they set the standard, and now, you know, they have this huge network of people that grew up out of youth being like, this is what I want to do. And it becomes like that big priority. But I know for you guys, like, practice, both, Saturday and Sunday, like, you have full-time jobs, or, San Francisco's expensive, like, there's tons of stuff, so I don't know which way to approach it to make it easier for more great, wonderful people to be involved in a track.
I mean, I don't know a lot about Seattle, but it seems to me that they pay their coaches enough that, like, the kids that, like, just graduate college and haven't found a job yet can actually make a living and, like, can actually pay rent coaching, which is incredible. Like, and that's why they have, like, third graders, like, playing whatever that tournament is, Seattle Range, right? Like, they have, like, a full, like, 9-year-old, like, 16-team tournament, because every single one of those teams can have a mentor that's, like, they're committed constantly, like, 5 days a week of practice, because that's what they do to pay their rent. And, like, in order to be able to afford riot season, you have to coach, so it makes perfect sense, right? Whereas, like, here, I feel like a lot of people move here for jobs, or, like, move here for school, and then everything else is sort of secondary.
Like public versus private coaches I know that Northwest Schools is a private school that pays all their coaches, and Disc Northwest, the Bay Area Disc equivalent, made a blanket rule on any of their programs they pay coaches, and they're actually paid like pretty well. Nicole used to do it, and she was like, yeah, there were a couple times they paid more rent for me. Yeah.
That's like such a novel concept and thing.
Yeah.
Do you have numbers on the gender of coaches?
Yeah.
For teams?
Yes, there is a little under 25% of our coaches are women, and something around like 20% of our captains are women, for youth specifically. And I think a lot of it too is just getting, and like maybe that's the piece that elite level players can do, is not necessarily like the boots on the ground kind of thing, but like telling college girls or youth girls like, hey, you'd make a great coach, or like, hey, you'd make a great captain. The reason I captained was because like Liz Penny told me I could do it. And Liz Penny says something, do it. And so like having that inspiration and that role model saying like, I think you do a really good job at this, like may get more girls to be in leadership roles too.
One thing we try to do as coaches on the channel is to encourage them to like do 1 or 2 sort of like community events per year. So like last year they did the, what was it called?
Oh,
Frisbee Fest.
Oh yeah.
And then this year they did Bossy. And it's like such a like seemingly simple thing, assuming they can get there. Nobody has cars. But it's like, you know, like the Bears Frisbee Fest, they just like ran a bunch of like fun games and stations and like totally owned it, and like saw all these kids come up and play, and then like the Bossy Clinic, like 200 girls. And I don't know, like if you've seen their fundraising videos, not in the pitch, but they're like so proud of that they put it in their video, right? Of like, this is a thing that we did, and we like coached 200 girls, and it was amazing. And yeah, we're like encouraging people to go along with it. And if like, you know, like in the beginning, if that has to be like, hey, we'll give you a $200 donation towards your season, like $200 is like $1 million to college kids, right? Like that goes such a long way. Whereas like that, like I don't know what their money situation is like, but I feel like you guys can probably come up with $200 somewhere.
That's where I just ask Mike for money and just assume that we have it somewhere. So
yeah, so but like what's like big to us as adults, right, is like very different than what's big to college students. Just be like, hey, we'll donate $100 to your team to like help out at this clinic, and they're like, okay, we're in.
Yeah.
And you start them off as like a monetary incentive, and then they're like, holy crap, like we just made a difference in all these girls' lives, and they just do it because it's something that we can do this. I've only been playing Ultimate for 2 years, but I can like teach a little girl how to throw.
One thing that Tommy's point sparked in me was the idea of like a pooled commitment as opposed to just an individual commitment. So might be hard for like an individual to say, I'm going to donate this amount of money or this amount of time, but if we make commitments on like a team level and like require like the whole team to commit X amount of hours or X amount of dollars, then I feel like there's that the idea of like picking up the slack, like that's what like teammates are all about, right? And so that might be a good way to frame, like, you don't have to do 4 hours, but like Classy has to do 50 hours or something like that.
And it could be like free admission to the I mean, I feel like we throw a party, it can get people to do things.
Yeah, let's throw a party. Yeah, no, I like that.
Exchange.
Or even like, if it's a monetary thing, like, hey, we'll throw $100 off from the charity, or like something. It's a team game, so therefore the burden gets placed on all teammates, not just you as a captain.
And even on club teams, there's people that have trouble affording the season routes. You can say like, hey, if you volunteer at this clinic, you'll get, whatever, $25 or $50 off your end of the season dues. Like, that could be enough to incentivize people to actually do it.
All right, everybody, let's start wrapping it up and getting ourselves back into a big group. Any closing thoughts? Parties. Yeah, parties. Anybody want to chip? I definitely. On it out. So let's gather. We're gonna get back together, everybody. I know you all just had really awesome conversations, as is evidenced by how hard it was to break up those groups. So first of all, I think that was about 30 minutes. I hope the conversations amongst you continue for much longer than that. Unfortunately, we don't have quite so much time as we'd like to dedicate to this topic tonight, but please continue these conversations. They were really great. So what I want to do really quickly is kind of just go around and have each group share some of the highlights. So maybe we'll start with this group in the corner. Whoever was here, anybody from that group want to share?
Our question was, how do we foster and support diversity and equity at the local level and at the national level? We didn't really get to the national level. We talked a lot about how really from a grassroots level we can support the local communities, and specifically some things that we can start to do and some things that might be helpful from USA Ultimate. So, there's a lot of people, like Mad Dog talked about handful-wise, and amplifying that voice. And we talked a lot about people in the Bay Area whose voices we want to amplify, and how we can more support those folks in the efforts like what Rocky's doing. How do we support them? How do we provide them resources both in time and money? Are we willing to make that commitment to give back to our sport instead of spending all the money and time on ourselves, right? We give ourselves a lot to play this sport. What can we do to give back? Or at some point, when does it change from giving it to ourselves to starting to give back? What are the resources? How does information get distributed? And how do we teach leaders how these things can start to be done? And what information are people lacking in order to support not only the white high schools? And then from a national level, are there any trade-offs USA Ultimate can make to get teams to give back? Or are there some quotas that as Bay Area teams we all can commit to give back to our community? Can we send 2 players a year to elite clinics so that they learn to coach? Can we commit to doing clinics, and not just from the elite teams, but all teams, and set that more as an expectation rather than something that only certain teams are starting to do? But a lot of teams don't have the information to know that they can even do those things.
Thanks. Somebody from this group want to share out? You were taking notes for a while.
Okay. Should I stand up there? I'll stay. So our questions that we posed to our group were, how can we become more inclusive, and how do we define that? How do we acknowledge and then try to overcome barriers to entry? And then what are some tangible ways to honor our commitment to inclusivity and equity? So we kind of started with what the idea of what success looks like and if there are metrics to measure that. And we talked about numbers and participation and demographics, like breaking it up amongst age, race, gender, location, which plays into all those things when it comes to having access to Frisbee, and not even high-level Frisbee, just the concept of Frisbee itself. And then we had Jen in our group, and she answered a lot of questions about BADA? 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 Okay, I'm sorry, I'm new to the day. I don't quite know the pronunciation. But finding ways to actually open the door rather than just like a quick exposure, a quick like clinic to an underserved community, actually giving opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to kids or to teenagers or to adults who wouldn't otherwise be able to have that. So how can we build long-term opportunities for Ultimate in certain communities and across communities? And then we also talked about team commitments, like Finney said. If we can kind of create a metric within teams to either this amount of volunteering hours or this amount of coaching or this amount of money goes to an organization to help. So kind of a mixture of those things. Generally sustainability and reaching underserved communities and like reaching them. Yeah, really, sorry, getting a little choked up. But actually tackling the idea of accessibility and what is standing in our way and how we are standing in our own way in a lot of ways. So.
How about this group over here?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay, so our question, let me turn around, for this group was, how do we educate ourselves and our communities to become better allies? First, we discussed like what it means to be an ally, and it was brought up that it's not just a one-time thing or when things are tough, but it's something that is active and requires consistency. We discussed the Frisbee Food and Feminism event and how we had quite a few people in the group who had attended and enjoyed it as a forum, but also acknowledged that a lot of the conversations were only really scratching at the surface, and it was difficult to really get deeper into the conversations. And I think we identified that part of that has to do with the fact that it's uncomfortable to engage in difficult conversations, particularly with people you may not know super well. So we were discussing like ways to get around that, and also just acknowledging that that is a fact when you engage in these topics. We talked about how, I think, what was it, Pres Day? Yeah, that a lot of teams got together to have discussions with each other. You probably know more about that if you would like to.
It was one of the food Frisbee feminism events.
Yeah.
At Pres Day, the Tufts women's team invited several of the other women's teams to have a kind of condensed event. So we got to have those conversations with teams that we hadn't seen before, hadn't played, or didn't know one another. But it was very cool to like do that with teams who we aren't normally around and don't normally get to interact with.
Yeah, so when I think about that, if I look at our local Frisbee Food and Feminism event, I see that as being like very local, much smaller group. An event like that might be more regional, more national. And in thinking about a solution to educate on the national level, this was an idea I had earlier. Today, actually, I did this webinar with Jesse Schaffner yesterday, and today, in thinking about this event and Hannah Kawai's video and Chip, I realized that it would be really cool to do an educational webinar series on topics like race and diversity and gender that would be sponsored by USAU, because it would allow national accessibility and conversations to happen, and I think that it would be a really cool and useful tool. So we discussed that in our group and talked about, let me see here. Yeah, not just having these types of webinars, but also thinking about ways to promote them to get the right people who need to watch them and engage with them.
a few things that we brainstormed were having local organizations like Bay Area Disc promote them, as well as making sure that like captains and leaders of other teams are pushing their players to watch, or maybe hosting events to watch them. Tom was in our group, and he is very gung-ho and thinks that this could be, he said that we could do as many webinars as we want. So, yeah, so this is kind of just like the first budding of this idea, but I think that if anyone has ideas or would like to be involved, like, I'm happy to help organize, because I know that I personally am in a place where I just want to learn and hear from voices like Chip and Hannah. So that was our last bullet point.
All right, how about someone from the back corner over there?
We talked about a lot of different things, but part of the heart of what we talked about was that we are a really unique sport, in that we managed to do what a lot of other competitive sports said was impossible, which is we have a non-athletic core to our sport, that's spirit of the game. So we talked about making being an ally a non-optional part of being an Ultimate Frisbee member. And in part having USAU come out as having an official statement that this is an important core value of our sport, and that would allow folks to get committees together to draft official USAU statements on equity in a lot of different ways, to tap into communities and individuals who are directly impacted by this, to talk about what it means to be an ally with the folks who we want to be an ally to, rather than us brainstorming what it means to be an ally without knowing their voices. And not having one person speak for all of those people, because that's the only person we know in our friend group, but really reaching out in a more broad way to get a lot of different voices, so no one has that responsibility of speaking for an entire group of people. We talked about exposing ourselves to different groups by stepping out of our comfort zone in our communities to get to know people at different levels of play, different genders, different races, different ages. We talked about needing to think not only about current players, but also people outside of the sport, and how we incorporate different tracks for folks who are playing in a park that we're just striking up a conversation with versus folks who are 20-year players. We also talked about the possibility of coaches and the coaching development program that's already restructuring being a really great place to incorporate conversations about allies, and making videos from organizations like Age Up, who are already doing a lot of work and a lot of really valued work in this area, having part of their curriculum be a required part to be a coach, or even possibly to be a player at the elite level. We also talked about having allies at the top of the game, like pro and elite players, be those allies and be those representatives, and making that a responsibility of, for example, being on Team USA, to be a support and a visible member who's being an ally. We talked about looking at our USAU, our national team, as an example of representing our community, and questioning areas where our national team doesn't actually represent our community. So for example, if we have a lot of diversity in players and we have predominantly white players representing USAU, what message does that send, especially to our youth who are looking for role models? And reaching out to that area to find out what those barriers in having more inclusive players is. So what's preventing more players of color from being on those elite teams? And then we also talked about Canada and the Trudeau model of making our leadership more representative of our community. And I think some ways to do that is to look at who's represented, and some ways would be like webinars, or who is talking about these issues and being that voice on the national level, or even on our local level. And then lastly, we talked about the importance of having more opportunities for diverse people from the community to talk to USAU. So lunches and dinners and events that everyone can drop in, and how are we communicating out these events so that players across the area, across all levels of play, are really feeling comfortable joining those events or hearing about them and are sharing their voices. Thank
you for that. How about this group that was here in the middle?
think she's still in charge of me.
That never goes away.
So I guess a lot of our conversation consisted of what I'm hearing from all of these different groups in terms of the external focus. So we talked a lot about getting people started younger, a lot about visibility and things that we could change about that. But you guys covered all of that pretty well. But one thing that came up as more of a minor point, I think, is that we also need to be looking at what our culture is and why that culture is a turnoff for some people. I don't necessarily think that we're not accessing all of these groups just because they can't make it to us. I think some people maybe do make it to us and then choose to go away. And the example that I brought up was just, you know, we're playing Ultimate in the Bay Area, and yet there are no like gay males in our community, or at least it's not that visible when we're in like one of the, you know, most populated areas for that type of diversity. So yeah, I think figuring out how to have people access us is really important, but also thinking about, you know, ways that we can be more inclusive and change the things that we need to change instead of always sort of patting ourselves on the back for being a really inclusive community.
Last group, that group that was in the corner.
Cool. So some of our discussion questions were, how do equity and diversity manifest in Ultimate for the next 5 years? And how does USAU honor its commitment to gender equity? So we talked about some specific examples where either ourselves or people we know had experienced inequities in Ultimate, and then talked about some tangible solutions for those. And that included, like for example, last year at the Stanford Open, I believe for invite, there wasn't an equal number of women's and men's teams, and so we talked about there is a TD training program that USAU has, but how can we make that more robust? How can we train TDs in communicating with teams, in allocating field space, and other resources? We also talked about financial barriers to entry, particularly at the high school level, and talked about how there's a lot of fundraising that goes on there. Some of it coming from BADA, some of it coming from the players and the parents themselves. But we recognize that as you get to a more elite level, Ultimate becomes more and more expensive to play. And so one of the questions we asked was, can USAU intertwine itself with the public education system to have a wider reach? Some other ways that we talked about honoring the gender equity commitment. Can USAU invest more in new college and high school women's teams? Can we allocate more resources to have coaches for those teams to help those teams get off the ground? And also, how can we allocate resources towards the mixed division and make that a positive experience for players there?
Okay, so one more exercise, and yeah, we are running late on time, so if you have to leave, leave. Don't worry, nobody will hold it against you. So now we're going to break out into 5 groups, and you need to take your equity, diversity hat with you as you go into these groups, and we're going to talk about these other topics. And so we'll do the same thing. We'll go for corners and then one in the middle here. And in the corner over here, we're going to talk about branding. And the question we're trying to answer there is, what are the challenges to the USAU brand and how can we address them? It's really fundamentally, what should the USAU brand stand for? What do we want that to be? And so that'll be over in this corner. Youth structure. What are the best investment opportunities in Youth Ultimate that will ensure competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention into adulthood? And so that'll be in that corner. Elite level play. What should elite level competition for players and fans look like in the future? Should it be mixed? Should it be ref? Should it be on Mars? Anything. So that would be over there, and that's UNES. Then there's semi-pro. So we have a policy about semi-pro that says that we do not acknowledge them. And is that policy working out? Should we keep it? Should we change it? That'll be with me over here. And then there is the Olympic dream, and what does this all mean? How can that impact our sport in a positive way? What sacrifices are we willing to make, and what are we not willing to make to realize that dream? And so that'll be with Tom. And Tom, you do that corner over there. And let's go find our corners in the next, oh, that sounded bad, but groups in the next few minutes. And then we've got a half an hour on this, and then we'll get back together for one big look at the whole picture. And that's it.
The thought behind this one is, when you hear USA Ultimate, what do you think of? What does brand mean to you? And what do you want it to be, right? This is the whole point of doing all these tours, all these events, is that we're working on the next strategic plan. So we have a chance to change it, right? In theory, if we could change it, what would you want it to look like? What would you want it to represent? USA Ultimate, what would you think of when they think about USA Ultimate? So kind of the question is, what can the USA Ultimate brand represent, and how can we ensure that it does? And we can get closer, or make sure we can hear each other. And I'm going to just jot down notes. That's how my brain works.
So I had to be the person, so I didn't get to talk last year, so I'm going to talk a lot now. I would like USA Ultimate to find a way to embody what so many people will tell you they love about the sport. Right? You know, what players will tell you, and I think anyone across the room is always going to say, I love the community, I love the community, I love the community, I love the community, I love the community. They keep saying it, right? What the hell does that mean? And if it doesn't, if it means something, if it means enough that everyone's saying it, can you capture it? Can you put the genie in the bottle? That's what I would love.
We are working tirelessly to expose our sport to you, and we are not comfortable confusing them and their families with significantly different versions.
Okay. Well, so for me, I think both. So I guess I started playing Ultimate abroad, and so some of my first exposure to USA Ultimate was like what is available from other places about like. So basically, my first exposure to Ultimate in the States was like the highest level, right? Seeing Kerry Wright national finals, and you know, knowing just kind of knowing the elite level, and then you know when you watch the commentary, hearing like, oh, it's a growing sport, and like, oh, you know, you hear like kind of little snippets that are, I mean, I think being back and like being here, I know more of like what is really there, but I think some of what, like if someone were to only get that snapshot, it's like, I do think that a lot of what people still see is only like the most elite teams, the highest level, and then a lot beyond that is kind of color commentary, especially when you're like watching what is available to the public. And so I think maybe along with the like embodying like the fullness is like thinking like the most elite teams are still only, you know, like the 16 or 20 teams that go to nationals, and then you think like we have 16 mixed teams in the Bay Area, right? And so like what, you know, like what about all of those people? Like I think thinking about USA Ultimate, like you want to think about the fullness of actually how big the Ultimate community is, and the fact that there are different, you know, kind of competitive tiers and levels. And even like that people choose to be in those different tiers and levels, like I don't know. I think yeah, recognizing the fullness of the community that exists and that it's growing, but that that there is a lot more to USA Ultimate than just like the levels that are what visible.
Right. So representing everyone.
I don't necessarily know in what how to do that, but I think being able to like convey that.
I think a funny place to start with that is USA Ultimate was rebranded at one point. It used to be the Ultimate Players Association. I'm sure that comes up a lot. And the last, knowing that the last strategic plan came out of the survey from all the players and said that the focus wanted to be increasing visibility, I think was a good thing that, you know, we had those voices, but it felt like kind of midway through it, people maybe didn't agree with how that was being executed or what that actually looked like kind of long term. And so being able to be an organization that moves along with kind of, at least the voices I hear are that, you know, that's not where we wanted to go at a certain point. We continue to execute that.
Right. The ability to steer the ship, so to speak. Your ability to change course.
I mean, Tifu was white. I mean, she keeps using the word community, and I'm thinking in my head, if you were sitting in a room of soccer players, would we be saying the soccer community? Would we be using the same terminology or not? I would assume the answer is no. That we, for better or worse, have somehow delineated ourselves different from other sports. And the struggle ultimately becomes, how do you keep that uniqueness and yet also acknowledge the athletic component of the sport? Because the UPA really started with just a bunch of people being like, this is a really cool thing, let's like get together and play across the country, right? Like that's kind of like how it started. And then like with that, but it was like, it's a cool thing, not necessarily because it was a sport, or maybe it was. Was it a cool thing because it was a sport, or was it a cool thing because it was really fun? And so many people get upset these days because they're like, we're not talking about how it's such a cool thing for other people. Or maybe they are.
Nobody liked the UPA.
Fair point. Oh yeah, the UPA.
I was there at the
Yeah,
first meeting when they showed up. I'm like,
who the fuck are you?
the captain's meeting, we're trying to work our schedule out. So it's you know, it's just unnatural. It's just I'm like old as all you guys combined probably. Right? So, but it seems like what I observe is that it's a communication change almost more than anything. I think just the language, I get the weekly email thing from USA Ultimate, what's going on, like what gets talked about like, from a word count perspective, like what exactly are the words that are being used, how are they being used, what's the tone, there's hardly anything about the spirit of the game ever in there, there's hardly anything about community, it's about, you know, this event is happening on this day, it's more of a scheduling thing, and I don't know enough to know whether like the organization's going in the wrong direction, but I think the perception people can get from the messages and the communication would be, well, that's not what I thought. I think when you get underneath it all, the brand essence is right. I mean, community, character, and competition. Those are the three words. It's hard to argue with those, right? But I don't think it's manifest because all the discussion is about the evil pro leagues or what's getting the Olympics or, you know, that's like the amount of words around that versus what everybody experiences, I think just doesn't match.
Nor do we represent a majority of the people who play Brisbane, right? Like the players that you're talking about who may go to the Olympics or who play for the Olympics is like, what, 1/100% of the players that are actually playing. And so, yeah, you can see a disconnect because then you're like, well, wait a second. And again, it's like that catering argument. Who are you catering to? What audience are you trying to attract or trying to prompt? And so to the extent, I mean, to Nado's earlier point, the women in this room all play a league. You don't have a rec player, but a rec player is still a USAU member. A youth player is still a USAU member. A parent is still a USAU member, and we have, what, 2 here? And that I think goes to this branding question. Who is USAU really representing? Who is their target audience? And I think to your question of messaging, sometimes that messaging is that target audience feels like it's only a certain subset of the player group. that USU actually serves.
What about some of the other people who haven't maybe had a chance to weigh in? Thoughts you want to share?
Thing to go along with the messaging. So, like, USA Ultimate is still very volunteer driven, yet the information to how to volunteer and how to get involved and where volunteers are needed, like within the USA Ultimate structure, like we need sectional coordinators, we need regional coordinators. That information isn't available very easily. Like we need teams to submit bids for these TCT events or sectional events. And that information you have to dig through this website that is very archaic and not pleasant to try and do. It's easier to Google like a sentence than like search in USA Ultimate's website. So like embrace the fact that it is very volunteer driven and that there is a huge amount of grassroots growth, but the information needs to be easier. And like that stuff should be in the emails. Like the coaching information isn't often there. It's like you have 2 weeks to do this thing, and then like why wasn't this sent out 3 different times over the last 6 months? So people can like think about it, see it again, and then oh now it's actually coming up, commit to it. Like the events thing and the write-ups could be a small subset of those emails. And like if you're interested in that, you're gonna find that information. You can click on that link. You don't need all of those write-ups in something that affects a very small
Yeah, I mean, it could even be a different kind of message, right? Like there's a weekly email, maybe there's a monthly email for all coaches, or there's
right. There's no separate information for like people that are signed up at different levels. Like everyone gets the same thing. That doesn't really make sense.
Right. It's just one email to all the different levels and groups and yeah.
I mean, can you make separate listservs? Can people elect certain listservs? Like,
Is that able now?
Yeah.
Or like based on, even like based on the kind of registration that you have, like someone who's registered as you is going to be like if their contact information has to be there, then you could cater cater newsletter to to that players or like college players. Or
as part of your registration, you're like, I want to get newsletters on this, 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 and this. I want no newsletters.
Right.
Some people just don't want them.
Right.
Coming in now.
Is it humanly possible? Yes. Is USA Ultimate possible right now? To be determined.
TBD. It's in the 5-year plan. Right? Isn't that the one? It's a 5-year plan. We'll have listservs.
By 2022.
Just you wait.
I laugh, but I'm crying. Tommy?
Yeah, I don't know. I liked what Byron said a lot about, like, if you asked me, whatever, 6 years ago, like, yeah, visibility sounds great, getting on Sports Center sounds great to me, and, now I do play a mix, but, like, what Anne-Marie said and what Anna said at the beginning was, like, there is, like, a huge feeling of disconnect in that community, at least in the Bay, because it's such a strong part of the community. And it is really completely unique. Like sectionals in the Bay at mixed is like gotta be one of the. I mean, it's super competitive. There's like amazing players at all levels, and it's like, but they feel completely disconnected. 90% of those players from USAU. Like, there's nothing reaching them. All they know is that, if you ask me, like, before I came to this meeting, like, all I know is that USAU is hell-bent on making the Olympics, and that's it. Like, I didn't know the benefits of the other benefits of the Olympics that sound a lot more important. But, yeah. But if, like, I like what Byron said about, like, maybe steering ship halfway through, like, that seems like something important, but I don't know what the mechanism is for something like that. But being able to involve those elements that are more grassroots, is something that's really unique and really powerful about Ultimate that I wish was highlighted a little more.
I'm going to embarrass Tommy for a minute. Can I? Tommy's mom is a board member, and she is my favorite board member. She is awesome. She's like a lawyer, a nonprofit. She ran a nonprofit before.
Yeah.
And she's been great. She's been on the board 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Tommy.
All good.
Maybe getting back to like.
I wanted, sorry. But, you know, to the extent of this brand issue, and like some of the discussions that we had earlier about gender equity and diversity, I kind of would like USAU to weigh in on shit. Like real stuff. Not about where locations are for things, but like, I was really surprised and pretty happy to see the NCAA being like, you know what, we're not going to have any events in North Carolina. Screw you. And they didn't even really say anything. They just said, we're choosing not to host events here. And yet, it's such a powerful tool. I had a lot of pride with the NCAA, don't get me wrong. But to see an organization finally say, you know what, we are going to step outside of our arena and offer commentary outside of it, acknowledge the world we are living in, and say something. I realize the NCAA has a lot of political and capital clout that USAU probably doesn't have at this point, but nonetheless, if you hear the members in this group and you hear the people talking in this room, most of them want to be active. Most of them want to be, to do more. And they want, I think more than anything, to be a part of an organization that does this. That would be awesome. To see USAU, even if it's a press release, say something. You know, like
the revised HB2 or the original HB2?
Either or, they're both bullshit. But you know. But I mean, that's a microcosm of, I think, larger issues.
Right.
You know, it would have been cool to see something like USAU retweet Riot all wearing Black Lives Matter headbands. Right. That's a simple and yet very effective message that I think would gain a lot of support within a community that has, again, prided itself on being particularly progressive, and yet also chides itself for not doing enough.
Well, that's I think one small example that I think of that USAU, I'm guessing, had a hand in is like at college nationals.
Oh, yeah.
All the observers wore rainbow wristbands for the observed things, and that was something that was like very cool because like a lot of the teams did a lot of things like had did rainbow hair dye, rainbow whatever, like had the wristbands, all of that, and to jog by an observer and see that they were wearing rainbow wristbands as well. Like I think like maybe that's with some of the like not being able to like change nationals at the last minute, but I think that's one example of like feeling like the organization itself in like all in our equity talk about like what is an ally or being an ally, like that's an example of like even a small action that the organization can take to demonstrate that it as an organization is an ally.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, I didn't forget what USAU did. I was at that nationals too, but I did feel it was reactive rather than proactive, and there is a difference, and it is noticed. And so, you know, fixing it after the fact, well, great. And I don't think anyone should take away from the USAU. I think made a sincere intent. He's far different than taking the ownership earlier on, acknowledging something may be happening, and being ahead of it.
Right. If I just take off my facilitator hat and just respond as a staff person of USA Ultimate, I guess I would just say in general, I feel like USA Ultimate has to be a little bit more deliberate, and there's a lot more internal discussion that happens before we're able to really
it's not like you can like respond same day. No one's saying that. I mean,
No. But even like even the HB2 stuff, I guess I would say it felt reactive because it was.
very slow process.
Yeah, but on the other hand, what we were seeing and receiving it, it was, hey USAU, what about this? Hey USAU, what about this? And a couple of weeks or so later, USAU issued a statement. Again, responsive, which is great. And USAU, I think, to their credit, has been very good about being responsive and acknowledging and recognizing complaints or gripes or bitching that we do on a regular basis with USAU. And they've been very responsive. And that's really great. I think what people in a lot of these discussions ask is how do we be proactive in those discussions? How do we anticipate these discussions? How do we facilitate these discussions rather than respond to complaint or to thing? And again, to USAU's credit, I'm not taking that away. I like USAU's response. I understood. I mean, again, there were some people who were like, "We have to cancel nationals." And I was like, "All right, good luck." But USAU found a way to really find that median line. But I think so many players appreciated it, and whether that got back to you guys, I felt like, again, as a coach being at that event, as a player being at that event, a lot of the players were ultimately really happy with the outcome, even though it maybe wasn't the perfect quote outcome. It was nonetheless a step in the right direction. And again, I'm not saying there's always going to be a right answer or a clear answer to these things, but it certainly, I think, goes a long way to just be able to say, we acknowledge it freaking exists. It's a thing. Okay, we see it. Give us some time. Even if it's give us some time to figure this out, or we'll solicit ideas on what do you think we should do about this. That, I think, goes a long way. Because again, to your branding question, then you start worrying about that target audience again. If you were saying, okay, well, there's this bill that's about, we're seeing this thing happening with youth. We want to go after parents. We want to ask parents, help us come up with a solution. What does USAU stand for in this situation? Then you engage your target audience in a way that isn't just asking the elite players or those club players what they think about something, but you go to the people who are affected by that and ask them.
Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. Good, bad, ugly, whatever. I like it.
There's good food. There's good too. I've noticed you on Facebook. Can I hear answers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Send me a message anytime.
Yeah, I don't post on Facebook. Wait for me.
I agree with a lot of what's been said so far, and something that I'd like to just bring back that one of the groups had talked about in the previous discussion, but maybe the grading line inclusivity and being allied into what spirit means and like what it means to be an ultimate player in a more direct and more explicit way. I think like what Stop said about USAU being proactive and supportive in small ways is like one step to do that, but I also think putting out explicit statements is like also really important.
We all know they're
because I want to work to see how great Ultimate is. I would like to be how to be
thing like that.
Does this all roll up into a grant? Like, what is that? What is this?
It's a great question.
Is this valuable feedback, I guess?
You know what I'm hearing is honestly kind of if we felt like USA Ultimate was reactive, proactive, and showed that they were listening and made it about the whole community and not just a small group in the community. Actually, I don't need to give my feedback. Or I shouldn't be the one saying this, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I agree because I think what we are trying to get to is points of convergence that we're going to write up here that are going to become officially part of the feedback that USA Ultimate uses from each of the small groups in each of the cities. And so, especially looking for like points of convergence among cities, right?
So I guess what I would like is kind of take what you've heard from the group so far and turn those into some things that you think you agree on, the group agrees on, or seems to agree on, and represent what you would like the brand of USA Ultimate to stand for, represent, and how that helps the organization and the sport in the future. No big deal.
I feel like what I've been hearing a lot, and also from looking at my notes, has been a lot on community, like the Ultimate community, all members of the community, in terms of both levels of play and in things like race or gender. And so I think that obviously we're like one group in a diverse area. I also recognize that I might not feel how different areas feel, and I'm curious, like, if, other people have the same, like, other community members that are not part of the area, essentially. But what seems to be clear, at least here, is that a lot of people feel disconnected, and that, like, the direction that USA is going is not the way that they feel represents what they want. I feel like that's what I've been hearing a lot of. And so I think it would be good not only to acknowledge that fact, but also, as Byron said earlier, to maybe think about ways in the future to check back in consistently with community members to make sure that, I think this vision tour, for one, is a great idea. But to find ways to consistently, year after year, check back in and make sure that people still believe in what gives it represents and feel that it represents them. Because I think it's easy to kind of, make a plan, start to execute that plan, and kind of get lost in it. I also think, like, again, going back to what Byron said, I think that even with the idea of the strategic being focused on visibility, I think just like any organization that, like, has a vision it's trying to execute, there are unintended consequences, or, achieving that goal might lead to, it leads to things that people didn't expect. And so you say, well, we're getting visibility, but, like, at what cost? And that's something that people, when you set that goal,
in 5-10 minutes, so if you can start putting down your areas of convergence, what you agree on, in divergence. Now would be a good time to start.
So I think, like, in that USA Ultimate is very big, so figuring out how to check back in, and I think realistically, like, as things move, no matter what, you're going to have people who are really, really excited about the way things are moving, and there's going to be people complaining about the way things are moving. But figuring out how to, like, kind of that, back to the, like, I don't know, like, thinking about, like, steering the ship, and, like, how to solicit feedback that really, like, that is representative of as much of the community as possible, to understand, like, because, I guess no one would, no one would deny that if visibility was the goal, it is being realized and it's being achieved. But it's also, then you ask, what else is being brought to light in trying to achieve this, right? That we then realize, right.
So I guess my question would be, I think it's also easy to say, I don't like visibility. But how do you then rework it so that you're now saying, but what I really want to prioritize is this, right? So getting the feedback, but then also figuring out the new path is a cool step, right? What would be a way that you would do that? So
My response is to go for it. So as someone who's been in an organization, it's really difficult when you, so much of vision building is to be prospective in the sense of you are trying to steer that direction, and checking back in is really difficult because so much of the implementation takes multiple years. And so you can say, I want to do this and next year, and that's also what you're saying. You're saying this year we're going to do this next year. But if you check in next year and then something's changed, you're like, oh, how do we just not do everything we prepared to do this year? Because the implementation takes so long. So like that's it. But to like the other question of like how do you solicit that feedback? I mean, I think USAU's biggest gripe is no one fills out the fucking surveys. Sorry for my language. Nobody fills out those damn surveys. And so they're like, we have 3% of our population telling us what we want. Okay, that's what we have, so we're going to go with that. And then people come back and complain about it, and USAU's like, well, if you fill out the damn survey, we wouldn't know.
Right. There's a natural resonance, right? Like, you know, like nobody filled out Martin Luther King's survey, but when he spoke, everybody said, yeah, that's the shit, right? Like, there's no doubt about it, right? So I think there's like a head and a heart thing going on here, like the head and the idea is right, but there's not a heart associated with it. I'm married an ultimate player. My kids played at YCCs, and we go vacation with other ultimate couples, and like it's a life-changing thing. It's not, I mean, you guys aren't there yet, but you'll get there, right? Your mom's on the board, right? Like this is like unbelievably powerful in that it's like, no, the soccer leagues don't get together afterwards and hang out. You can't just show up in Seattle somewhere and find out where the ultimate is and get taken back to somebody's house if you're new to town and get put up and hang out and have 50 brand new friends like the day you step on the field. It just doesn't happen anywhere else. And that's so powerful. I think we all feel it as we start the whole community idea. It's because at every moment when you're on the field, you have a teammate, opponent, and referee all at the same time. And what it does to your brain to have to handle all that at once is really like powerful, and like, it just changes. And you know, as I think about business dealings and negotiations, I'm trying to say, okay, how do we make this work for all of us instead of I want to get more than you, so I get 51 and you get 49. So I think the thing that's missing in the brand is USA Ultimate is trying to have U23, U19 teams win gold medals, right? And to win gold medals, 125 and 2, whatever the annual award said, right? And you want to be on TV, but there's no Uber message that says, we can persuade the games to change it. When we see people interact with you, they just become better people. We have the whole world trying for this crazy shit we're doing now. It would be really improved if everybody got spirit of the game in their heart. Like they, right? Like, I mean, I think that's why. I appreciate it. You make the diving catches against these sports and all that, but there's something about what it does to people's brains. So how to process the conflicting information of, I want to get that block and I can't foul them because it's not right. In that nanosecond when you make that decision not to do that, that just changes things. And that's the hard part of it, I think is just completely just not part of any of the messaging that I read. And I don't read a lot of it, I don't go to a lot of tournaments. But the idea of having YCCs and US Open at the same event, you know, where like the little kid going, it's like you're she made the play, right? Like there's some heart in that, but it didn't even get announced that way when that announcement came out. And I wrote Tom, I said, Tom, I read this shit announcement of just the facts about co-locating these two tournaments. Like it's a factual thing. I'm like, you guys have to romance the membership. You've got to seduce the membership. You make them love you. And you can do it by just rewriting it. And go to the forum and like tell you guys, oh my God, why did you say so? Like, so I think it's just it's just like, the brand needs more heart and soul. And I think if that happens, everybody will go, okay, yeah, we thought we were going there last year, we didn't get there, but you know, we're still doing great.
So more concrete things that I have to leave. But in terms of just being able to solicit your feedback, I mean, this is the issue with voting too, right? Like again, the numbers will be really dismal. Can you condition these things as a precursor to membership or as a precursor to renewal of membership? So that you carrot and stick it, and then you actually get the feedback. Because right now the optionality of it, and we see it happening in general elections, state elections, anywhere, until you actually vote. Like the only people, the countries that have the highest rates of voter turnout are the ones who make voting the easiest. And I know it's a lot of things to say that voting is so easy, it's online, it takes 5 minutes, oh my God, why is it? No. That isn't actually what's making it easy. What makes it easy is giving the time, incentivizing that voter turnout. And then you're going to get the feedback you probably are not getting right now. People don't have otherwise the time, perhaps the resources to vote and give you that feedback. Can you carrot and stick it in a way that incentivizes it?
$5 off your renewal if you vote.
Yeah, if you vote by this day. I'm going to be serious. No, seriously.
No, I hear you.
But it's a big thing. I mean, if you're a youth player and you're like $30 and you're like, oh, if I vote, I'm going to get $5 off.
All right. They also make us fill out our course evaluations to get our grades.
To get your grades.
Yeah. Otherwise, you have to wait until like 3 days after everything is.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, everyone you get like 100%
turnout, but you fill out your course evaluation.
Yeah. You want voices? Incentivize them to give it to you.
So this is kind of, I wanted to, maybe I'll explain before I read it, but so a little bit of what I'm hearing are these kind of 3 points that I'm grouping. I haven't written them yet. The first one is kind of this feel of being disconnected. And so if you were to do that future-facing, having USA Ultimate do my kind of more of a check-in and be able to make adjustments listening to the members. So, let's say we come out of here and we come up with a strategic plan and we get 2 years into it, some kind of follow-up or ability for people to make comments and I also, but I think even on a broader scale, not just strategic plan, but feedback, messaging, kind of coming in as part of, maybe it's part of it, like she said, even messaging or feedback is part of your handle. Like there is a screen you go through before you can buy that you have to, so maybe something along those lines. And then kind of a second one is this idea of kind of the convergence of community. It's grassroots. It's everyone. It's not just about a certain group. And how does that look? How does that become something, a feeling or an idea or even an emotional play, so to speak, on we are the world. It's not just we are the best of the best, right? So it's a different feeling. And then kind of the third piece is kind of a messaging, email, website, feedback kind of piece, more targeted messaging, maybe a website that's more along, that gets into the mind of an ultimate player. Like when I go on the website, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a place to play. I'm looking for information about requirements. I'm looking for information about XYZ, right? Like, yeah. So it gets into the mind of someone getting on the website who actually plays the sport. It's more of a user experience, so to speak, I guess. What do you think?
I would add to the messaging that often comes out, not only is it very bland and no life in it, but they're so long that any of the important messaging is lost.
because you have to read through, I don't know, 6 paragraphs to actually get the full message that USA Ultimate is trying to give. And it also often comes off as like, one, it's reacting to something, usually pretty negative, and they're trying to come back from something bad that's happened. And
would you mind giving me a specific example?
I think with it, like the 2-2 schedule and the US being this requirement for a lot of teams, and that went really poorly. And then USA Ultimate coming and saying, look what we've changed for you and how great we're making this for you. And it's like, well, maybe people don't think it's that great for them. And instead of telling us that this is a good thing for us, like tell us what it's going to be why. Like, I feel like the why is often missed in the messaging, even though there's like 6 paragraphs of information.
So I actually have terrible handwriting, so you want to write this for me? I'll write it. Thank So was there anything I kind of missed? If those are kind of 3 themes, so to speak, was there something I missed that you would like to add? Kind of this idea of, yeah. So I guess the first one was kind of what I felt like Byron and Tommy were talking about, this idea that, but even to the point of slap, like more proactive, less reactive, and the ability to listen and change based on feedback and not, I think to some extent there's a strategic plan for a reason and it guides us, but I think it's helping with constraints. But using feedback to even steer the ship within. Maybe you still prioritize feedback, but you still prioritize visibility. Feedback is, it should be visibility of everyone, and not just certain players or certain teams or certain, it should be visibility of kids, it should be visibility of people, a community, people playing at the local level, it should be visibility of the sport. In this viewpoint, this lens, rather than just the visibility of on ESPN. Like, visibility can mean a lot of different things, right? And so, the ability to listen and make changes. So, just summarize that. But that was one of what I felt like was maybe the first point, and then the second one is kind of the idea of USA Ultimate represents the community, it represents everyone, it represents grassroots efforts that are happening to get kids playing, it's representing people playing sorry, yes, I want this, yeah, that works for me.
Proactive and seek out feedback.
To make changes based on So then, so the second one, I guess I would say kind of this idea of community. It's about everyone. It's about kids learning how to play. It's about people playing in leagues. It's about, the Seattle Women's League has 16 teams in the winter on a Friday night in awful weather, and it is awesome from everything I've heard. So, it's highlighting things going on all over the country, not just things going on at the US Open or whatever, right? Or it's, even if it's at the US Open, it's sessions that are about, sorry. Yes, I think that's perfect. And then, so kind of the third theme I heard was, really, to Carolyn's point about messaging, it should be proactive, it should be interesting, it should be telling you why, what, who, what, why, where, when, like giving you the vital information in a less bland format. Consider like really, really deeply considering the audience. Yes, that's a good thing.
That will also likely increase people's willingness to buy.
Best brands. Well, so I think that's I think that's brand of ultimate experience.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier, is like spirit of isn't it important to include like, you know, everything that we've been saying about diversity and equality as part of spirit of the game? Because if that were a part of it, then when you're considering like, well, we want to do X, Y, and Z, you would have to take that into account because that's at the core of what you say represents, and you're never going to sacrifice it for other people, you know?
Someone asked me what ultimate is, there's a lot I want to say about it. There's a lot of talking about it. Versus if someone asks me what's USA Ultimate, it's just the national meet, right?
Right.
And so we need to think of USA as something that facilitates all the things that I love and celebrates all the characters. You know, highlighting the stories that talking
Like make it like the mechanism of all the powerful things, not just like
It's interesting though when you say that now, because the UPA was the world with players in London, you know, so it was like it could represent Ultimate and the essence of Ultimate, but now you've got, when the Canadians started winning our nationals, like what's that mean, right? Like, so all of a sudden it'd be like US, and then it went into like our own jurisdiction. You know, I missed that. So I think there's a structural problem with the governing body, unless the governing body decides to say our mission is the stewards of spirit of the game. That's our number one thing. If we are stewards of spirit of the game, first and foremost, we do all we can to preserve it, promote it, and get as many people attached to it as possible. And we're doing that by hosting nations, by having gum and like that. But that's what we're trying to do. We think this is world changing.
So this is kind of a off topic, but I'm really curious. I want to know what everyone does professionally. This is totally just for me because I'm a curious nerd like this. But I
Trying to bring energy management software from Australia to the US.
I do video editing and animation.
I'm the director of a learning center. I'm an accountant.
No.
I'm the director of finance and film. So I do everything at HQ that is not program related. Accounting, legal, insurance, IT, ops administration, and I run the USA Ultimate Foundation.
And I also am the head of the Kufal Character Foundation, who founded the Kufal and Character Spirit Awards International. Kathy and Pete are dear friends, and they embody everything that we all aspire to, and we wanted to make sure that not that their names were recognized, right? Like the Lady Byng Trophy in hockey, who's Lady Byng, right? But just the idea that people inspire just compete for that in addition to winning the title is pretty cool. He died of ALS 15 years ago, his 9-month-old son, and Kathy had brain cancer that left her skin cancer.
We were talking last night in Seattle with the woman who was the executive director when they formed the mixed division, Joey Gray, talking about how that was a huge decision when to do it. They tried to do it at a separate time, and it was basically like they did focus groups, they did surveys, they did everything to try and figure out if it should be at a separate time or the same time as the men and women's division. And initially they tried it at a separate time, and they just didn't feel that was as successful, so they did it at the same time. But the focus groups, everyone was like 50-50, do it at the same time or do it at a different time, you know. And, but she just said it was really interesting to see what it's become. The reason I kind of tell that story with that is mixed division actually hasn't been around super long. That was 15, 20 years ago. And there's not an award like Fairfield yet for the mixed division. I look forward to the day, not when someone passes away, but when there is a movement that creates that award.
Why doesn't USA just do it?
Yes, so within the division themselves, they have created their own, and so that is something that happened for the first time this past year. It just is more of it is started and run differently than who fall in fair were done by an outsider.
So they contacted USA Ultimate just like right at the end of the season, like, can we do the next thing? And I think it's awesome to like put together proposals for us. So it'll probably
yeah. I'll be interested to see, yeah. But yeah, because I think there should be a celebration of that form in all of our divisions. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, thank you for all your work.
Yeah, it's actually, I think this part is fun. So I think we should figure out more ways to come out to the communities, but even to interact with the communities with the host events. Because when we host, when we run college nationals, most of us are there. So why can't there be forums with the coaches? Why can't there be forums with the players? Talking about feedback, talking about some of the things that are coming down the pipeline that impact that group of people. I think there's more interaction. Because I think even knowing, meeting someone at one of these type of things, and then being able to be comfortable enough to call us on the phone and reach out to us and say, hey, remember I met you at that one time at that one event, and now I have a question. I think sometimes it's great. Helping people feel like there's a connection to USA Ultimate and we're real people, because we are. So,
It's a tough crowd too. And Ultimate players are very smart. They're very vocal. They're
what everybody does. It's so interesting. I mean, these aren't slackers.
It's self-selecting things. If you want to get involved with something, it's mostly self-selecting. That has this ethic behind it. And you gotta have, you're not just gonna just go with the flow. Maybe somebody's gonna get in there. Wait a second, let's make this better. Come on, let's go. This isn't right. No, change this word. Whatever.
Well, a lot of times people are on a team. They started their team. They were the captain of their team. They rallied all their friends, and so they're not just the type of people that sit around and wait for things to happen. Anything else going on? What's going on? Any trials started? to like mix, do like a combined thing too, like. What about men? Keep up with people on animals. I'll be there next week. Yeah. Yeah. So I went to DC, Seattle yesterday, San Francisco, Raleigh and Atlanta next week, and then Denver.
When's Boston's schedule?
Yes, the last week meeting. Boston is Thursday night. Yes. Thank you. It was really nice to meet you. Thanks. I feel like we got the 5-minute warning like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I know. Like, what was I saying?
How did you guys hear about this? Were you invited? Did somebody email you and say come to this, or was it just
Facebook?
I saw the announcement from USA. Someone invited me to this event on Facebook, and then I read a bunch of
Yeah, you invited me.
I might have invited Myron.
I think I saw the announcement for the tour, and I think I looked like, oh, it'll be here, but didn't like write it down, and then like got Facebook, the event features like become a thing.
Yeah, because it reminds you. Like, you go to your Facebook feed, and then
Well, that was the problem with the Boston one that got canceled. It's like, every day I'm like, hey, you're coming tomorrow? And the thing was relentless. And I'm like,
no, I'm not going.
Stop this because people just show up.
I know. We emailed about that. She had a reasoning. I forgot what it was.
Yeah.
We have a new digital person, digital communications. So hopefully that gets, that aspect at least gets better. My other
What is your USA number?
It's like 197.
Like 8,300? Are you 4 digits?
I think like 1031.
I know.
I resisted joining for several years.
That's interesting to me, 'cause like, so there were numbers at one point, like TK gave numbers to the person who started the UPA. Yeah, gave people member numbers, but then it didn't translate to when there was some kind of actual system. Those numbers didn't go with that, so people had different numbers, and even the people that like played really early on sometimes aren't in the system or don't have a number because there was kind of a disconnect there. And I'm not sure exactly what point in time it was. It was in the 80s, I think. Late 80s. Yeah.
What, when EPA started?
No, when they really got, the numbers actually got formalized.
Oh, that, I don't know.
Yeah, but it started in 79, but actually maybe didn't get formed until we did it in like 91. I don't know. Things you learn. Hi. Henriette, I think I embarrassed Tommy. I talked about his mom and how I did say she's my favorite board member, I'm sorry.
You just walked out. Nice job.
I know.
He's the only person that left.
He did actually shake my hand, so he wasn't like, he didn't hate me.
He didn't say anything about it. And his mom is fantastic.
I called her my favorite board member, sorry.
She is the only board member who can do certain things. She reads all the financial statements that Julia makes and actually understands them. What's her name? Kathy. Yeah, you met her. She's quiet. You do need to wrap up. So I'll be obnoxious. Yeah, you're done?
We actually listened to you gave us a 5-minute warning.
Everybody ready? I'm going with that to yes. So, like I said, we have this policy. I'm going to actually read the guts of this policy. It's the actual policy. And the question is just, should we keep going like that or should we change it? It's a little harsh, so you ready? There's a preamble which is worth reading, which is that it's changed the sport dramatically over the last 5 years. This semi-pro thing, we all thought that wasn't even going to last a year, and it's now 5 years, and it's actually having a massive impact. More people are learning about Ultimate in Pittsburgh through the semi-pro team than anything else. It's like, it's a pretty big deal, what's happening. Okay, so here's our policy. For many reasons outlined below, which I'll read, USA Ultimate will not promote, partner with, or otherwise formally recognize or endorse the AUDL or MLU at this time. This decision is based on several fundamental and philosophical differences and operational conflicts between USA Ultimate and these leagues. One such determining factor is USA Ultimate's position is the significant variation in officiating systems. USA Ultimate does not believe in nor support the fundamental changes that are being made to the sport by these leagues as outlined in long-standing policy. Along with WIFDF, we remain committed to the self-officiated nature of the sport and the principles of spirit of the game. The use of referees and a different set of rules by these leagues represents a significant contradiction to the values and mission of USA Ultimate. And it's our belief that much of what makes Ultimate unique in a very positive way is lost in and devalued by the models of both the AUDL and the MLU. We are working tirelessly to expose our sport to youth, and we are not comfortable confusing them and their families with a significantly different version of the sport. As both longstanding value of our organization and organizational policy, gender equity continues to be very important to USA Ultimate. Neither semi-pro league provides any significant playing opportunities for women, and we believe providing equal playing opportunities for both men and women is the best way to both grow and show off the sport. So, how's that working out?
So I consider myself a very old school Ultimate player, and I love self-refereeing. I think about if I have kids in the future, I'll definitely want them to learn all those lessons. That being said, I think it's ridiculous to not acknowledge these teams that are out there, that people are following, people are interested in, that are generating interest in the sport. It just seems like it's a battle you're destined to lose. Could really be a future where USAU Ultimate has refs. That's not necessarily what I want, but it just seems short-sighted to not acknowledge or interact with them in a meaningful way rather than work with them. I think everybody wins, in my opinion, in that scenario. That's just about refs. The gender equity stuff, I don't have anything really that smart to say about it, but as far as the rest go, I think it should not be a sticking point.
When this first became a thing and USAU took a stance on it, I really supported that. I thought that it was great that USAU was standing up for spirit of the game and not referee and standing for gender equity. But now the AUDL has progressed in a way that it's more visible than a lot of the product that USAU puts out. And because it's almost entirely male, there's one exception now, which is pretty cool. That's what kids are seeing. I know, like, especially in San Jose, I went to a couple of San Jose games last year, and like the amount of buy-in that they have from families in the area is amazing. There are people coming back week to week with their kids. It makes me like really, really sad that these kids are going there and the boys are getting to see like men playing Ultimate, and the girls are going and seeing the same thing they see everywhere else, which is just men playing sports, and they don't get to identify with anything. So I think at this point, in order to like keep promoting gender equity, like one of the strongest things that USAU may be able to do is somehow work with AUDL in order to try and, I don't know how it's going to work, because if they don't have the same priorities, that's tough to work out. They have leverage there because maybe they don't care as much about those priorities. So I have no suggestions of how it could possibly work. But I do think that now is kind of a time to maybe start cooperating in order to, or at least talking to them, open up avenues where we can start promoting, you know, women in this sport as well. That's getting out to all these people.
Okay, I have a lot of opinions about this. So I'll preface it saying, like, I run an organization, a club that benefits from the USAU structure, so there's that. I have my own vested interest, but as a player and as a fan of the game, and as a historian of sport in a way, historian of sport, the introduction of a corporate model into every sport has destroyed high-level competition in every sport. So before Major League Baseball, every single small town had a baseball team, and they all competed in a ton of leagues all over the country for decades. And then Major League Baseball came in, corporatized the system, and basically the tip of the pyramid got everything. And now there's very little high-level access to competition for adults in any other sport. So I do think that if you ignore the AUDL, you will lose, and Ultimate will be ruined for our children. I do think the stakes are that high. I do think that it will suck the talent out of USAU, and eventually your product will not be anything nearly as good. And people will just lose interest, and it'll be like every other sport where a ton of kids play, a few less high school kids play, a small percentage of college-age people play, and very few adults play. That's the typical structure of like all other sports in America. And that is largely due to the corporate structure that all of these sports have adopted nationally. So I do think that USAU has one huge advantage in this battle, and that is that you have the players. Like, you've got everyone in this room is a USAU member probably, and you can use that to your advantage. I think that if you harness the energies and just the play of all these players, basically the way I see it is you're putting your club system up against the AUDL, and you're losing because the club system is this sort of haphazard, grassroots, decades-old, unstructured thing that you then came in a few years ago and tried to impose this like Triple Crown tour on top of, without acknowledging the fact that the actual units of competition, the clubs themselves, are just what are they? They're just people that decided they're a team one day. There's no like charter, there's no official structure. Any group of people can form a club, join this competition, go to nationals and win, which is glorious, and that's the great thing about the system that we all love, and it's why we should fight to protect it. But those teams are not capable of competing against an AUDL team who's selling tickets and paying their players, and you don't have to pay everyone knows. If there's money, it's money. club teams don't have money. We're all paying to play still. And I don't think that we should get paid to play club, maybe someday in the future. But I think that if you want the club system to compete against the AUDL, then you need to address what the clubs are, the units of competition at the local level. So, I mean, here, shameless plug for that's what I'm doing. That's what my organization is. So my organization, Ultimate for All, is an attempt to restructure the club system in the model that is used in Europe, which is where major sports are played in clubs. And these clubs are community organizations. They don't pack up and go to Vegas. That's impossible. It's impossible for Manchester United to pack up and move to Vegas because it is a community organization owned and members of that community, funded and supported. So personally, I think USAU has one last good chance to squash the pros, which I think you should do, for all those reasons that are in your statement, because of spirit of the game, because of gender equity, and that is to help clubs restructure as community organizations that can serve the totality of Ultimate players. Form organizations that every single Ultimate player can be a part of, and then provide the competitive platform for those organizations to be a part of, which is what you do.
So one part of the state organization model and the affiliate model that is a lot like that is that the clubs would actually be part of the local community organization. So BADA, it is BADA here, right? And Revolver would be in the same organization. And the players would be part of coaching and training, and the leagues that are part of BADA would go to the Revolver games and be fans in the seats. And that would all be one unit that is this community-based organization that you're talking about. So you are thinking along the same lines as Tom. That's what he wants it all to become. To answer your question on squashing the AUDL, I'd love that. And not just because I'm jealous that they're doing a great job promoting, because they are, but because I'm worried about the exact same thing. And so if you have any ideas on how to do that, please do tell me. But let's not us dominate, because we have. And so what does everybody else think?
I've talked to a couple players that are out of college and playing pro. And one thing they said to me was, the kids coming into college now, and I learned how to play Ultimate in college. The kids coming in now have 5 or 6 years of experience. They're a lot better. So by the time they get to college, they've had 4 or 5 years of spirit of the game. They continue for 4 or 5 more years through college of spirit of the game. And Tall Bob is playing pros, but he's had 10 years of spirit of the game. But when he's playing pro, I don't think he's forgotten all that basic concept. And he can go back and forth, play pro, play club. I don't think they forget that. And as you're developing, as Eric and BADA are bringing Ultimate to elementary, middle schools, they're going to have spirit of the game in their blood for even a longer time. So if the issue is losing spirit, they're going to be doing the conflict resolution for many more years because they're getting started earlier. I just see, like I said, going to San Jose games and you're seeing these guys play. There are heroes, but should USAU say, well, these guys shouldn't be your heroes. The club guys should be your heroes. Well, they're the same guys going back and forth after AUD 4 months are done. So I think in the long run, they need to get along, kind of for the future.
So you're in favor of a policy that would say we should be talking.
Should be talking, yes.
And that was you. You should be talking. It's not, neither of you are going to go with endorsing.
Right.
Or are you?
Start with talking.
I mean, to me, it's Ultimate at the end of the day. you know.
Anybody else have thoughts on whether or not, whether or not we should be communicating?
I think if you put out, we're really serious about observers and gender equity, if ADL comes back and says, we'll compromise these issues, then you should talk, right? I mean, I believe the best way for gender equity, most practical way to get gender equity to pro level would be mixed. Right, to me, I believe the most practical way to get gender equity to pro level would be mixed. Because we have two different gendered leagues, it would be hard to guarantee equity for access to both leagues and promotion and disability. I think mixed is the most practical way to get it. I understand there's downsides to mix, it's not perfect, but I think it's a very practical way to get gender equity into pro level. So for example, that's kind of conversation we have at ADL, okay, if you guys really consider going mixed, this Cascades Cups next week, I think is a really exciting thing. I think you should do more of that. I've been pushing the people that at ADL who were listed the last 2 years. I wanted to have an All-Star weekend, the same kind of thing. Each region put together an All-Star mixed team and play to get mixed at a high level. I think it's definitely a way to get gender equity. So I think for USA's policy, I think you say, yeah, here's our principles. If you want to improve and work these principles, we'll talk to you.
Okay, that is very similar to an idea in DC, which is just that. If we said, do you agree with the values of gender equity and the spirit of the game? And if the answer is yes, then will you agree that at some point in the future you would be playing with gender equity and with spirit of the game? And if they then say yes, then the door is open to talking about how we can help you get there.
Right. I mean, you don't have control of whether AUDL succeeds or not, really. I mean, but what you run the risk of is allowing them to steer the direction of the sport if you are just going to continue to ignore them and they continue to promote and get all the visibility. Something great about the Titcombs is they decided they wanted to have a voice in that discussion. So they bought a team and now they're part of this discussion and they're bringing gender equity issues up within the sport, within that organization. So it's whether you want to let AUDL steer, and it's not a group of people that I think you have to fight. I mean, most of the owners come from, UPA, members, a lot of that owners, at least that I've experienced. So I think there are ears that may be receptive to those discussions.
Who here would be in favor of a policy that said, if you are to agree to a equitable future, including playing the spirit of the game, we should work with you to help you achieve that and be successful even? Let's take that off the table for a moment, but just leave it at, if you agree that that's the future that you want, we will work with you to help you get there.
Can we start simpler? Can we say, if, not even committing to any sort of gender equity in the future, just who's in favor of USAU talking to them?
Okay, let's do that. Who's in favor of us talking to them? Just conversing. So now you want to take that one step further?
I guess so for me, I struggle with USAU wanting to steer the direction of the pro leagues because they are their own entity. They'll do what they do, right? And I think there's advantages to USAU working with the ADL. I think there's advantages to the ADL working with USAU. I guess one thing that I struggle with is that so I'm gonna out Josh. Josh is the owner of the Flamethrowers, and from working with Josh, I very genuinely believe that he believes in gender equity, right? He's got daughters, and I the work that he's done to help run the women's All-Star games and the Cascades Cup. The organization might be spread thin, but I do genuinely believe that he believes in gender equity, and that's a starting point for conversation, right? That there might not be I don't know, like an overall push in the league to like what am I trying to say? Like it's hard to just be like, all right, go mixed and we'll work with you, right? Like that's like such a huge jump to make. I feel like at this point that like we just need to like take a step back and just start talking about having these conversations and like I think you two are, that's great that you guys are both in the circle. Ironically, you actually haven't acknowledged each other yet. So, Josh, Henry, but I think that like it's worthwhile to have these conversations because you know kind of what Bob says like that like there is money involved in the AUDL and there is a lot of like intrinsic I mean like it's not a gender equitable league at all. Women are more or less locked out of it unless you want to like own or coach or be staff or dance on the sidelines. But I guess like my point is that there's room for conversation. There's absolutely no need to like absolutely ignore each other. It's two versions of Ultimate and there's room to work back and forth. I think there's room for both an officiated sport and not. Whether USA Ultimate believes that that's the right way to go, like there's room for that. And they're going to continue existing. They're going to continue showcasing to little boys that there's this avenue for them to become professional athletes. And I think, yes, like, just rambling. The jump to like push them right now to be like, yeah, become mixed and we'll work with you, I think is really big to make. But I think there's definitely room for USAU to be like, this is what's important to us. If that's important to you, let's work together and see how we can.
Would be that out in a far year, like 8 years from now, you would reach there. If they had the goal of achieving gender equity and spirit of the game, then we would work with them to get there. But that would be like, because to ask them to do something now, they run their league, do whatever the hell they want, and they're just screw you, right? But we could say if you value those things, and I believe actually you do, that why wouldn't you be agreeable to working towards those things?
So I'm fine for being outed, and I was going to speak anyway. And look, I started playing pickup in high school. I was a mediocre club player. I ran East Bay Winter League for a few years in the mid-90s. I had to stop playing. My body gave up. I was financially successful enough that when the opportunity with some friends to do this started, we were like, this is the dream to not to own a pro team. I come from Baltimore when the Colts left town in the middle of the night. I was like, I can't believe I'm owning a pro team. But it was more that Ultimate is amazing. And the more spotlight it can get, it's always going to be different. Whether you have 4 cones, like I learned on 4 cones with surface tension boundaries, right? Like, you know, like the only time we had lines was when they didn't kick us off the high school field. I mean, we all learned how we learned, and it's become more structured. So I only speak for myself tonight, but I will speak for my partners. We don't ever expect, one of my partners probably, I don't certainly expect to make money in the foreseeable future running a pro team. There's a lot of years of investment ahead. But I'm doing it because I want the world to see how great Ultimate is, and I would love to have it be. All right, so I'm going to out myself on the record. I think the idea of a mixed pro league would be amazing. But I'm one voice in an ownership group, in a division, in a league, and that's me. But I think I'm going to get a little political here. That I'm personally very involved in some nonprofit organizations, and at the Women's March there was a lot of question of like, I can't be part of the Women's March if this person's a part of the Women's March and this one. But if you share 80% of the goal that Ultimate should be known and played and promoted at the T-ball and Pop Warner level and have rec leagues all the way up,
then we ought to be talking about the 80% of the things we agree on and can work together. And I believe the league would welcome that, with the understanding that there's some stuff we haven't worked out yet. And together we actually offer enough eyeballs to get real corporate sponsorship, probably, that would only be the benefit of the local disc leagues to get. I mean, I don't want to focus too much on myself personally, except I'm only me, so I can't speak. But like, California Roll, the Berkeley High team, girls team, sells concessions at our game because they need to raise money. And they ask us, could we do this? And we said, sure. They need money for travel and tournaments, and if we can help them, that's great. And with the Cascade stuff, we're super excited. We didn't do look, we're going to be putting out a piece that's going to have a strong public apology for the poor job we did in publicizing the trial process for the Cascades Cup women. But we're just trying to take some steps forward. So I'm personally upset when I hear you want to squash the league, at least before you even say, what do we have in common? Because if we only have 20% in common, then fine, we go separate ways. But if we have 80% in common, we have stuff we can work on together.
I totally agree. I think there's the possibility that the values are actually aligned and that it can all work out great. When the values aren't aligned, I want to switch it. And I kind of apologize. That wasn't very nice.
You're passionate.
Yeah, I really care about that. And so, there's some people we haven't heard from much yet. And so, Tenzo, sorry, and then if you've got something to say.
I'll just say, going back to the very first question of whether the policy should change, I think the idea of having just a closed-door policy and hoping that the league dies is the fastest way for the USAU to die, I guess, is what you're saying. When corporations come in, the sport dies. And I think right now the true value is the AUDL is a great platform for people to be talking about these issues. And right now, the overlap is essentially 100% between the players in the USAU and the AUDL. But, I mean, the longer it goes as a closed-door policy, more players are considering either only doing USAU or only doing AUDL. And as that happens, I think you'll start to lose the ability to I don't know, recover from the original stance. And when it does diverge, there will be an issue in being able to communicate values from either side.
One thing I gotta do. Hey folks, we're gonna regather in 5-10 minutes, so if you could start putting down your areas of convergence, what are you agreeing on, and divergence. Now would be a good time to start doing it.
I guess my 2 cents is I think it would be great definitely to have a European model where our club-based is all community and there's no separate leagues, there's no separate organizations, we're all kind of working together. But I think since now that the 2 entities exist, it's impossible to kind of backtrack from that and hope that one will not continue to survive. So I agree that it is probably best for both the USAU and the AUDL to just begin the talking and seeing like if there can be something that can happen, and see if there's a way to convince like the AUDL that maybe gender equity is a value that you want to pursue sooner rather than later. I think the Cascades Cup is great. I think it takes a lot of courage to say that mistakes have been made for it and that there could be better ways of doing it. But mistakes are going to happen if you're going to try something new. And I think to not be afraid of speaking up to that or like supporting that is something that everyone can do either on an individual level or on a bigger club team.
Yes.
So, do you think there's
room for USAU to, like, instead of making a blanket statement about the AUDL, to work with individual organizations, right? Because, like, unlike MLU, where it was more of just like one big entity, I don't know if I understand this correctly, but I think AUDL is like more each team and like does its own thing. So, like, is there room to work with the flamethrowers and the Cascades to start and show them that, like, hey, like, we're gonna partner with you because you've done this gender equity thing?
The answer from what I heard in Seattle is actually no, because the Cascades did try and make a mini league of mixed, and were told they couldn't do it.
By whom?
Steve Gordon.
By what?
Steve Gordon, the CEO of the commissioner. So
is there
what
a
you
push
can
from,
do, like if you were to say, I want to make my team mixed tomorrow, you're not going to be able to do that. So your hands are somewhat tied because there's a commissioner and then there's I guess you have a board meeting where all the owners are there. But Tim DeBio and Steve Gordon and Rob Lloyd set most of the direction, and you're not given that much flexibility to say, yeah, hey, if you 4 teams want to start a mixed league, we'd do it with you. Because in Seattle, the Ticknells told me last night that they tried to do that and they were told they couldn't.
But I guess as like, forget going to a mixed league of some number of teams. Is there room for USA Ultimate to say, hey, we'll sit down and we'll talk with flamethrowers and Cascades because they've shown that these values that we value are also important to them, and just sort of start that conversation. And then maybe if there's a value to the AUDL for partnering with USAU, then maybe other teams are like, oh, maybe we should be doing this, this, and this because the partnership with USAU is important for these reasons. I have no idea what those reasons are, but that's for you guys to brainstorm.
Also, just with that CEO who may not agree with it, and so maybe Josh's hands are tied, but the players' hands aren't. And like someone mentioned before, the players are that's where the power is. So if the men in this league, they could easily say, I think, and this could be where the power lies. Like, we want a mixed league next year, or we want a mixed league 5 years from now, or else none of us are playing. And I think most of the men that are in these leagues have proven that they support the women in their communities, and I think most people agree that a mixed league would be so cool to have the 10 best women and the 10 best men from each city on the field at the same time. That'd be amazing. So just a thing to keep in mind, maybe to tell the men on the team, and that they have the power here, and so that they can speak up and maybe
Josh, is that true or not true? Would you just take the next 20 players if the top 20 said, hey, we're not doing it?
I can only speak for our team, and we worked very hard to find a great team who is committed to community support. And if all our players said, you know what, we want to play mixed, I don't know what we would do at this point in the season, because it would be a big shock. I would say, just to focus on Anna's point, I know our organization would love to have dinner together with you guys and get to know you a little bit as people. I never played elite. I don't know. I never had the gifts. I never had the drive. I never had the opportunity. Some of my colleagues in ownership did, but I would just welcome a chance to talk about opportunities.
And I think that everybody agrees that should happen, because we got 100% on that. Margot, have you got thoughts that you're biting your lip on? It looks like you do.
Mostly just echoing the common sentiment that's been shared about, I think at this point the AUDL is not going away anytime soon, and so the sooner that the two entities can work together and communicate with each other, I think the better for the sport. So I would love to see more of that. And I think there is some value to taking smaller steps, not necessarily the AUDL needs to be mixed next year or in 4 years. There's still a lot of work that could be done. Sure, Seattle and San Francisco are having lots of great showcases for women, but what about teams that aren't doing any of that work? That would be an interesting place to start, I think. So there's, I'd say there's lots of room for small steps at this point.
No, I'm going to call you out.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything that's been said, where I think the two entities should be talking, and I think there's a lot that both sides could benefit from, because USAU can get a lot more youth that are interested in the sport, and with that you can foster that spirit of the game, you can foster getting a lot more people involved, and eventually, like, if they're interested in pro, like, you're fostering the players that will go down and play pro, you know, 10 years down the line. So I feel like there's a lot of mutual benefits that can come from working together, but I don't know what kind of, how engaged both parties want to kind of work together, but I do think that it's mutually beneficial and we shouldn't like ignore each other because ultimately our goal is to kind of provide more opportunities, provide more visibility, and this is good.
Okay. Have you got anything on it? Okay. It's absolutely fine. So
Henry,
we're going to
can I say
wrap up.
something?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the, I'm going to say it. My voice will be on there, so I'm not going to hit stop. Though I want to hit stop, but I'm not going to hit stop. I just would want to say one thing that, in terms of visibility and what goes on, I'm part of Fulcrum, and we had this really cool opportunity at Club Nationals to film with it. And it was awesome, and I had a great team that was willing to help do it. The only way that it happened is because a phone call to Jim Garrison, owner of the Dallas Roughnecks, who was at the time, Jimmy Nickel was in the room with him. They were willing to put $9,000 at a drop of a hat towards this project. And no offense to USAU at the time, it was coming to them a little bit late, but USAU wasn't able to contribute anything towards it. Now eventually they did, and I don't want to necessarily make assumptions on why, but their money came after that money had already been committed. And without the support of them, it wouldn't have happened. They also did it with the condition of not even getting credit. All the stuff that was put out never said Roughnecks. Never even said it was the players of the Roughnecks. It was top men's players. And Jim made the condition that it had to be from Eric, not from anything else with the pro leagues. And so I think there are a lot of efforts being done by owners, and Jim's not the only one. You're another one of them. And you could tell stories of other things that you've done, and you're not going to gloat, and you're not going to put it out there, where they're putting their money where their mouth is in some areas. And I think that's awesome, and it's unfortunate that it doesn't always get to be seen.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's awesome. There is the whole can't see it, can't be it thing, but that helps. Money helps. Money's good. And that's really nice about it, right? But to not have women on the field is not setting the example for the little girls and the little boys are getting. So I agree with you, it's wonderful, but it's nothing compared to being on the field. Just my opinion. You can vote for somebody else.
Can I say one more thing on that?
Absolutely.
This goes to the history piece, and I do wonder, like, you talked a little bit about other pro sports, and I think if we look at all the other models, how often does like USA Basketball go to NBA and say, hey, are you being gender equitable? Or early on in those days, was there that conversation that's what helped spur on the WNBA or the women's professional hockey with the NHL? And yes, it's usually behind, but I don't know what those conversations look like. I don't know what's happened with those, but I do wonder, someone like Tom may be very well positioned to know what some of those conversations took place in some of those professional things. And my guess was USA Basketball and the NBA were talking. So back to the original question, conversations, a dinner.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, I will write this up on a whiteboard. I think that wraps it for now. You're free for 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to quickly go through these things. We are not going to read them. We are going to summarize what the groups thought, starting with youth, and Will's going to do that.
I'm Jen.
Oh, even better. Thank you, Jen.
Cool. We divided youth up into 3 different topics, competition, growth, and retention. And the big thing that we got out of competition was making sure that everyone feels welcome and invited to try out for Team USA. Finances can be really tough on folks, and just even taking out the you may have to pay up to $5,000 can actually incentivize people to apply. Let's see. We talked about media coverage, how kids in particular love stats, stories, pictures, get them excited about the game. The other big thing, which is my talking piece, and I say it a bunch, is to not make blanket regulations on all divisions. The girls division right now is more of a developing one, and creating more restrictions on people being able to access that actually hurts the division itself. So that's competition. Growth, we talked about how folks on Team USA should have a service requirement after they get back to give back to their community, which then will get the community more invested in wanting to give money to that person being a part of Team USA, as opposed to like, here's your great experience to go to Prague. It's like, hey, I'm giving you money because I know that when you come back, you're going to be giving back to us as well. Access to video online resources. Like the big thing is like personal connections. So kids who've never played Ultimate before don't watch Ultimate. They don't really want to watch Ultimate, but being able to have like Mad Dog come in and say like, hey, this is why Ultimate's really cool, and have that one-on-one connection makes a big difference. And basically creating more opportunities for that. We talked about I think a big thing too was also just like allocating more money towards growth and retention, and helping support youth players who are on like Team USA and competitive teams. And retention, more leadership opportunities, more providing opportunities for youth to be a part of the leadership. And a cool idea was like really big jersey swap opportunities. So like USA Open and YCC having like a women's and girls jersey swap, having a jersey collection so that when you go to a clinic, you can like give out jerseys that someone had too. So that's random scatterings of what we talked about.
Incredibly well described. Thank you. Tom? Oh, Grant. Sure. Olympic dream.
The Olympic dream.
You got
it. Okay, so our group went through a process of realizing that at the very high level, kind of simple perspective, the two membership levels of the Olympics, one which we already have, being kind of a member of the, I don't know the actual term, the Olympic Committee or the Olympic family, seems like it is only a positive thing, and everybody was pretty much on the same page, converged. That's a great thing. It opens up opportunities for the sport to spread, and for USAU to be connected with other organizations like the NCAA up higher, and also like the youth organizations and folks from disadvantaged backgrounds getting funding and visibility there. At the Olympic program level, which we don't have yet, but might have if Los Angeles gets the bid to host the Olympics in 2024 or 2028. We also eventually came to converge on that being a positive thing, so long as we don't sacrifice our values. And that was something that we said a lot in our circle, and that I've also heard a lot outside of this room, and Ultimate being a good thing to grow, so long as we don't sacrifice our values. And so at that level of like talking about, quote, our values, everybody's in agreement that we don't want to sacrifice them. And as soon as we get more specific as to defining what those values are and discussing what happens when two of our values come into conflict, there's no longer convergence. And so, for example, one of the things we talked about was visibility has been one of our values, and equity has been one of our values. Most of the time, those are in concert. But occasionally, those might come into conflict, and what do we do when that happens? It could be argued that visibility won out over equity in going and not walking away from an ESPN contract that stipulated that men be the final games and that they men's games be the final games and that they get the majority of the spotlight. So we talked about USAU having their values, defining them as we always have, but also ranking them so that not only USAU but also the Ultimate membership at large knows what to expect when two values, if and when two values come into conflict, which one is going to win out. And that is no longer a simple discussion, and that's where some people are going to walk away, upset and disagreeing, but seems, and this is now me speaking, not for the group, it seems good to have the difficult conversations beforehand and commit to one for consistency's sake and for kind of the unity of USAU as an organization and its members to make those conversations happen before they're forced upon us.
Wow.
Well, I was gonna go, but I don't want to follow Grant. So I'm going to speak for our group because I want to start with a quote by Byron that. Byron in our group, Byron. We were talking about brand, and we were talking about. I was going to find my facilitation sheet. Going forward, what can the USAU brand represent, and how can we ensure that it does? And Byron said he wants, the brand USAU to celebrate, encourage, facilitate all of the things that I love about Ultimate. And I just thought that was great in the sense that it's celebrating youth playing Ultimate. It's not just celebrating winning at the highest level. It's celebrating the little things that happen when a kid, finds the joy of the sport and touches the disc for the first time and gets hooked, right? And celebrating a lot of those things. And so there were kind of 3 points. The brand to be associated with spirit of the game, but also so be more proactive and be willing to make changes based on feedback. So one of the things that came up was the idea of visibility. And the last strategic plan, or the strategic plan that we're in now, visibility is the #1 goal. And at some point, maybe some group of people or a large group of people felt that that was being prioritized in a way that hurt other things. And the ability to take feedback and change what USA Ultimate is doing and the way they're doing it. Maybe it's still prioritizing visibility, but it's visibility of something different than the highest level. Maybe it's visibility of YCC instead of the US Open. I mean, what does that look like, and being okay with getting input and making changes? And maybe some of those aren't logistically possible based on a contract or whatever, but maybe they are. And what does it look like, and being okay with being open to changing. And then the brand to be about the community. It's about everyone. It's about Ultimate at the grassroots level, local leagues, the classic level of the TCT, everything. It's not just about one group or one level, one small group of people. And then the third was the brand to be, so the messaging. Start with the why, connect and celebrate the community, the messaging to be more engaging, the messaging to target different groups of people, and not just, right now there's one weekly email, but what if there was a monthly email to all people who are coach or coach player members that talks about things that coaches need to know, or celebrates stories of coaching, or talks about coaching awards that were won, or those type of things that make you more aware of the things you need to know about that apply to you, and not just one general mass email to people talking, about things that you could read maybe on social media. The website being a tool of messaging and brand and communication.
Time's up.
Yeah, I was done.
You're trying to keep us to 2 minutes.
So in my group, we talked about elite level play and what that looks like. There's kind of a lot on there, but to summarize, so when we talk, I grouped it into how, when, where, and who. So if we talk about how, one of the things that came up actually towards the end, but seemed to be a pretty big theme, was that spirit was still really important, and that observers play a big role in that. And so we talked a little bit about observers versus refs, and I think generally the group kind of converged around liking the idea of observers, but maybe trying to put more into that program so that we have better observers, so that we don't end up with poor-spirited games, because that's one thing that does drag elite level play down. We had a few ideas around having like a tennis-style Grand Slam format that goes on throughout the year as opposed to a concentrated season. Another idea about having match play when possible, maybe a hybrid of the tournament-style plays that we have now, along with match play, to sort of highlight, try and get both best of both worlds. In terms of who, we mostly talked about the different divisions and elevating mixed as a good representation of the sport, as well as from an equity standpoint, since mixed has been recognized a little bit less, but pushing them to the forefront and elevating mixed as the more visible division. And then in terms of where, I think there was agreement that for the players anyway, the best environment to play a high-level game is on a field where there's crowds around the sideline, the energy is really high, and you could see people's faces as you're about to make a play or you just made a play. But from a fan standpoint, that's really hard because we are also trying to talk about showcasing the sport and that we want to have actual fans watching us. So we talked about having a hybrid model where maybe have a court seat kind of ticket where some fans get to be on the field, and then when that fills up, then we can have more people in the stadiums, and that would be a way to get players to have that kind of energy on the field, but then still try and fill up stands or play in stadiums where we can have people watching.
Thank you, Ness. So semi-pro is a big deal because it's impacted the sport massively over the last 5 years, and USAU kind of didn't think that was going to happen, and then when it did, had a reaction that we will not acknowledge you. We will not acknowledge you're there. And that was because it wasn't played with spirit of the game, and it was all male. And our values said, do not work with them, do not support them, do not endorse them, pretend they don't exist. The group thought unanimously that instead we actually should be talking. That doesn't mean we're endorsing or hugging, it just means we're not. And so everybody thought that was, which is a big shift from the policy we have today. There was a lot of appreciation of this European model, that the community and the big teams are actually the same. So here, Revolver would be part of BADA, and it would all be a community thing, and there would be a lot of interaction between the two that would be good for both, and that in Europe, that's actually how the soccer models work. And that's something that people in the group had a lot of excitement about. Only semi-related to semi-pro, but anyway. There's thought that the players have a lot of power, that they could say, hey, we're not going to play with you guys if you don't do things the way we actually want things to be done in the sport. Then there's a question mark of whether that's actually true. Would they just play with the next 20 best players or 200 down, and would they even care? I'm not sure. So we just don't. The idea that we could actually agree on values, the notion that we could say, hey, we and the AUDL have the same values possibly if you actually agree with spirit of the game and gender equity is the thing in the future that you really want to get to, and if they actually agree that getting there would be, that's where they want to go, then maybe we would work with them in small steps to actually try and get to that place someday. And that was not completely agreed to, but there was a fair amount of agreement that had some potential. All right, so that's it. Now, you need to look at the whole picture, digest that, and say, what are the themes here tonight? What are people in this room saying about Ultimate that rings through this whole thing? So take a look, think about it for a moment, and see if there's anything that stands out to you as what you're kind of saying tonight. So that's going to lead to the stickers. But when you leave, there are comment cards in the back. You get to score us 1 to 10 on did we communicate, did we hear you tonight. You get to write comments to tell us how to do better. And you get to put dots on these. So you've got 5 dots. Everybody's got 5 dots. What's important? What should we be working on? Where should we be putting money? Where should we be putting resources? What are all the important things here? What's important, what's not? Take your dots and put your 5 dots on the things you think are the most important.
If you didn't get dots, we're right here.
Okay. But before you do that, hold on, before you do that, has anybody got I realize we're running late tonight and later than even usual. Has anybody got a thought they want to say to the whole group about what this all says for them? And it's okay not to, but if you do, now's your chance.
One thing that I've been thinking for a really long time is that USAU is actually trying really hard to communicate. They try in lots of different ways. This is an awesome way, and I am really hopeful that the community steps up its involvement in organizing and in voting in board of director elections. And obviously we understand how important coaches and volunteers are, and people like supporting the funding of all these things that we want. So I think that we can be doing better as well, and I really appreciate you guys coming out here and working really hard to connect with us. Thanks.
That was awesome. We can end on that. All right, now for the criticism. No, come on. So thank you, Stephen. Any other thoughts?
I had a thought that had to do with how Mad Dog started us off, and also like wants to build off of Hannah Kawhi's speech from last night in Seattle, which is like a lot of people are still here, which is really cool because we ran later, but some people had to leave. But just to like think about the voices in the room that aren't necessarily here, but people who still love Ultimate. Like we had a whole discussion about youth Ultimate, but there are no kids here. So like if you coach youth or like you know youth who play or people in college, like ask them what they want and then like send your feedback to USAU, because just because people are kids doesn't mean they don't have really good ideas. So yeah.
And by the way, USAU has a phone number you can call and give those ideas anytime. You don't have to wait till we come here. Just All right, I think people are tired, and justifiably so. So we'll call it a wrap. So you get your dots and your comment cards, and have fun. Cool.